We're now live.
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good evening and welcome. You're listening to Let's Talk, or should we say, watching Let's Talk. I hope that we've greeted you with the Islamic greeting of Assalamu alaikum. And for all those listeners out there who are non-Muslim, a good evening to you, and you're very, very welcome. So this show tonight is going to be a really important, Brother Sajid will tell you that. So who we got and what are we all about? So Let's Talk is web-based, and we try to stimulate debate, and we ask the questions where a lot of scholars, unfortunately, are not able to be around and answer those questions. Some people are frightened to ask those questions. Some people make the answers up themselves. So what we try to do is give you a balanced approach, and we're asking questions on your behalf. In the studio, what we do have is we have the director from the charity Etiquette, Brother Naseem. Brother Naseem, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brother. Jazakallah khair. A huge assalamu alaikum to everybody. And I pray that everything's going well. Ramadan's going well for you, inshallah, in these last blessed nights.
Yeah, that's it. And we also have in the middle the shotgun himself, Brother Sajid Iqbal. Brother Sajid, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you, Zaid Naseem? You good?
Yeah, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. We just had a couple of missed calls there from Brother Taz. I think he's trying to get hold of the illustrious, and you can't get hold of him at the moment, but Brother Sajid. So I'm sure he will give you a ring some other time, inshallah. I'll send him a text message now. So can you explain what our show is tonight, please, my brother?
Yes, we can. So today is a very important topic. We're going to be talking about the Sunnah, okay, in terms of, the example of the Prophet ﷺ, the way, the life, the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ. But the question today is, by following the Sunnah today, is it meaningless? Yeah? Or is it life-changing? I'm just getting a call from Taz now, but I can't answer it. But anyway, so basically, the following the Sunnah, what is the point? What is the purpose? Is it out of date? Is it a bit backward? So don't give me any fatwas. I'm just asking questions, okay? Is this what people might be saying? Or by following the Sunnah, is that the best way to live our lives? Is that the way to make sure we get success in this here and after? So what we're going to try to discuss in the show is, what is Sunnah? What are the different types of Sunnah? When we've got the Quran, why do we need the Sunnah? Okay, so when we've got the Quran, why do we need the Hadith example? And then we're going to go into issues like, when we do follow the Sunnah, what's the benefit? What do I get out of the Sunnah? And then what I want to spend a lot of the show on, once the Shaykh is on, is go through many Sunnahs. What are the everyday Sunnahs that we can or should be following our life according to? That is the idea of what we're going to try to do. So then, by the end of the show, the idea is that Sunnah, what it is, but also, what are the 10, 15, 20 things that are parts of the Sunnah that we can adopt from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, to the way we eat, to the way we drink, the clothes we wear, our relationships, our behavior, our etiquettes, our everyday life. Let's get some Sunnahs, inshallah, and let's see if we can apply them and if we're doing it already. So that's what we're going to try to do, inshallah.
Jazakallah. And if you want to take part, we've got a few questions that have come forward. I'm going to read them out, and that way Brother Sajid can make a note of them, and he can bring them up as and when he feels necessary. So I will start off with the way that you can contact us. That's via text message. So you can send us a text on 07801 951 501. The topic for tonight, following the Sunnah today. Is it meaningless or is it meaningful? Is it life-changing or is it a waste of your life? And our guest tonight is Shaykh Haroon Hanif. So inshallah, he'll be with us. What I will do is I'll give you out the text that we've got so far.
Oh, he's already here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alayhi salam.
Yeah, nice of you to join. I mean, good of you to join us, Sheikh.
Thank you very much, brother.
Are you okay?
Alhamdulillah. Are you on good behavior today?
No.
No. All right. Naseem and Saj, can you get rid of them, please?
Well, he's
I'm
not
on
got
good
he's
behavior.
not got his Man United shirt today, so that's a good sign.
Alhamdulillah, it's a good start there.
What about his can of lager?
Astaghfirullah. What is that?
Yeah, well, you know, if that's what the Sheikh say, he's the one. Remember, his team is the one that actually had Carlsberg written on the front of it, not ours.
Yes. I think you said that and he disappeared.
He's
We
disappeared.
lost
Yeah.
him for a moment. Inshallah, he'll come back. But just to let you know, so far we've already on 40 viewers already, alhamdulillah, so far.
Subhanallah.
So that's more than any other show in the first 5 minutes. So alhamdulillah.
Right. Alhamdulillah. It says here, Assalamu alaikum. Question for Shaykh Haroon. Is it permissible to use Islamic banks and their banking system, more specifically Rayan Bank and mortgages, etc.? Now, I did give a little fatwa on this earlier on to the brother or the sister about mortgages, and so there's a few questions that have come forward for Shaykh Haroon, and before I go any further, there is one thing I have to say. Brother Tareen sent me a clip of a zikr mehfil done by Shaykh Haroon. I sent that to a guy who's been listening to our show for 4 years. This person is not a Muslim. He's part of the EDL. I said, just, you know, you might not understand what's being said, but give us the courtesy and have a listen to it. He came back. He said, I didn't understand a single word. However, what I did notice is after listening to it, I seem to be a lot more patient. So, you know, the virtues of zikr cannot be underestimated, Shaykh Haroon.
True, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's something that we did use. We've got quite a few questions that have come through. I think people are confusing this with a Q&A, but brother, alhamdulillah, it says here, I've taken out a student loan and I'll be soon wanting to pay it back. Don't pay it back, simple as that. You'll be fine.
Good, man. It's the Q&A with Mufti Zahid here, isn't it?
Well, there's a few things, Sheikh, that I do know about. Mortgages, one of them.
Zahid, just one little thing. See this Abdurrahman Ali Arshad there?
Yes.
This guy's filth, man. You know what he told me?
No.
He told me I should come on with a Man United top.
Did he?
A'udhu billah. He's worse than you, man. Put that away. What was our deal?
You said I can't talk about anything.
Yeah. Oh my God.
That belly dancing needs to get out of my room in Ramzan.
Yeah,
what's going on there?
I think you need to get up because clearly the devil's not locked up in your room.
Yeah. Listen,
I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to those two. They seem decent folk. As for you, forget you.
The orange is back.
So what we're doing today?
Sheikh, yeah, can you just read what this says on this orange?
I'm not talking to him. Sajid, what we're doing today?
Right, so today, inshallah, we have got a very important topic. It's not about oranges or lemons, unfortunately.
Said the bells of St. Clemens. There's just a little light rhyme. I don't know what I don't know why every time, I show an orange, Brother Wahid, if you're listening, is there anything wrong with these oranges? This guy's a professional fruit farmer. Is there anything wrong with this lemon?
Wahid, though. Ask Brother Wahid what he wants to ask. He's a filthy lad. He's filthy, that Wahid.
Yeah, inshallah. We will find out.
Okay, so I just put in there. That's all right. Okay.
Zahid,
have you got any more text, or you want me to start?
Please start.
Okay, thank you. So, inshallah, today we're going to be talking about following the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And what does it mean today? Is it meaningless or is it life-changing? What is the Sunnah? Why should we follow it? What are the benefits? If we've got the Sunnah, if we've got the Quran, then why do we need the Sunnah? Okay, and also, if we don't follow the Sunnah, what am I actually missing out on? And then, inshallah, when we get time, we'll go through quite a lot of different sunnah of the Prophet and to see how we can apply them today, inshallah. So first of all, Shaykh, if I can just ask the first question in terms of, just to explain to our audience, what is the sunnah, first of all?
طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. The term sunnah in the most general sense means a practice or a way. So in the Quran we hear about the term sunnatullah, the practice of the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can have any type of sunnah. You can have what's termed sunnah hasana, sunnah sayyi'ah. The Prophet spoke about whoever introduces a good sunnah has a reward of it and all those who follow it. And likewise, he spoke about a bad sunnah. So sunnah in the broader sense just means any practice or any way. But the more specific usage of the term, the sunnah is the way of the Prophet ﷺ, who came to show to us and explain to us the way in which we understand the Quran and the way in which we live our lives. That's the meaningless sunnah. Allah.
So when we're talking about the sunnah, is it, from, when I was young and when I learned a bit about Islam, is, the way I've understood it, and you could tell me if this is correct or not, is what the Prophet ﷺ has said, what his actions are, and what he's approved. Is that one way of understanding it as well?
Yeah, that's the definition of sunnah. They said sunnah. The definition of sunnah is any statements, actions, or approval of the Prophet ﷺ. That's the sunnah. Anything that he said, anything that he did, anything that took place in his presence that he approved of by not condemning it. That's all sunnah.
Thank you. And then in terms of the different types of sunnah, I know as we grow up and when we go to mosque or people go to madrasa, they get taught. What types of sunnahs are there that we should be aware of?
There's a range of them. In the legal sense, you have what's termed the sunnah mu'akkada, the more emphasized practices that the Prophet ﷺ, he would do consistently, where it's discouraged not to do it. Then you also have like a nafil, which are practices that he ﷺ either did or he encouraged to be done, but he didn't emphasize it, just a good practice for reward. And then there's also sunnah in terms of adat. There's also sunnah in terms of general habits or customs of the Prophet, such as what he wore, such as the way he walked and the way he slept and so on. So you do have a range of sunnahs.
Yeah. So from them, what is the difference in terms of the sunnah to mu'akkadah, the ones that the emphasized one? Does that mean that that's something that the Prophet ﷺ did all the time, and that's something that we should follow and adapt?
Yeah.
And if we don't, is it kind of sinful? Would you say?
So sunnah mu'akkada, which is the highest degree of sunnah is mu'akkada, emphasized. Yeah, it's something that the Prophet ﷺ consistently did, and he would only ever miss it on rare occasions. And in that case, we say it's discouraged not to do it, and it will become sinful if it's consistently missed. But it's not considered a major sin. We shouldn't see it the same as missing a farm or missing a wajib.
Okay.
And what would be an example of that, Shaykh?
The highest example of that is the two sunnahs before Fajr. Missing the two sunnahs before Fajr. And the other one, because we're in Ramadan, it's Taraweeh. Taraweeh is amongst the highest and most encouraged of all sunnahs.
Okay. Shaykh, I think they spelled your name wrong on the screen.
No, it's right. It's exactly how it should be.
Sweet.
It's exactly how it's meant to be.
Okay. Now,
or should we say?
Just on, in terms of the sunnah, I just want to ask one question here because, you've explained it quite well there in terms of sunnah mu'akkadah and the ghair mu'akkadah and the other types of sunnah. Sometimes, scholars, they're very strict when it comes to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. For example, when it comes to the beard of the Prophet ﷺ, the size, the turban. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but, when we look at those kind of stuff, because if you look at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, look at the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. I don't know if Sheikh's still there. I think you're still there. Okay, cool. So in terms of, if you look at the enemies of the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of Abu Lahab, Abu Jahl.
Sorry, can you just hold on a second? Sorry,
yeah, we'll do.
Just give me 1 second.
Please. Yeah. Zaid, if you've got in text, then we'll carry on.
Yeah, I have got a couple of text messages. I can read them out now. Eid Salah, Shaykh Haroon, please explain the way we could perform Eid prayers this week at home with our families. Our local masjid says we cannot pray Eid at home and that 3, I think it says here 34, but I'm sure it's meant to say 3 or 4 takbir should be recited in place of Eid prayers. Nice one, Shaykh. So somebody's asking a question there. I think a lot of people are going to be asking about this Eid one,
we will do.
because
Yeah, we'll actually go into that. We'll
I'll
actually
just
go
go-
into
I'll
that
just
in a
go-
second.
I'll go through the last 2 text messages and then you
Yeah.
can carry on. Brothers, this will sound alarming with so many different types of hadiths. You don't know which ones to believe, and it causes conflict and sectarianism.
Yeah. I've got that
Should I
question down,
comment on
inshallah.
that? Can I comment on that?
Sorry?
Can I comment on that? Well, we're actually going to come on to that in a second. Okay, so that's on my list of questions, inshallah. So before we get into that, let's just go one step back then. In terms of, people argue this case that we have the Quran. Okay, so if we have the Quran, then why do we even need the Sunnah?
I'll answer that in 2 ways. First of all, the Quran is a manual of general guidance. When you study the Quran, it's rare in the Quran that you find details. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet to come and demonstrate that manual, exactly how to understand and how to live that. So when we say why do we need it, because if you look at the Quran and then you start looking at particulars about how to pray and a lot of worship, even details about how to be as a human being and so on, the details are not spelt out in the Quran. The Sunnah comes with those details. So that's why Allah decided, he didn't need to, but he decided to send the Prophet to explain the details of the Quran. So the Quran is a general manual. The Prophet comes, the Sunnah comes to explain the manual. And then the second, that's exactly what's stated in the Quran. The Quran itself tells you, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الذِّكْرَ لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ. We've revealed to you the remembrance of the Quran in order for you, the Prophet, to clarify what's been revealed to them. So the Quran itself is pointing to look at the way of the messenger, to understand the Quran.
So is it fair to say, and this might be a controversial way of actually wording the question, but is the Quran incomplete then without the Sunnah, without the Hadith, would you say?
The Quran is complete. The Quran is complete. And the Quran actually says, مَا فَرَّطْنَا فِي الْكِتَابِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. We've not ignored or missed out anything within the book, but the Quran itself still needs explanation.
Okay.
So to understand, an example of that is a textbook. You go to a textbook, any course that you're studying, you will still need a professor to come and explain the details behind it. You wouldn't say the textbook is incomplete. It just needs someone to come and clarify it.
Yeah. Although we do have, Shaykh, a few muftis online who always seem to know better. So for those, of course, we will have to explain the fact that we always rely on the Quran and the Sunnah. But there are obviously those people who rely on the third one, the Shaykh from California, Al Google. He's obviously knows better than everybody.
So is it fair to say then, Sheikh, that without the Sunnah, you can't really understand or practice the teachings of the Quran in its completion?
Absolutely. And anybody who claims otherwise, there's enough verses in the Quran where we can just put a simple challenge down to them, say, okay, if you don't have the Prophet, then how are you praying? How are you paying your zakah? There's enough details there that need clarification. So
okay. And I think you've kind of answered it, but let me get a bit more detail. Does the Quran in many verses actually say or instruct us to follow the Sunnah?
Yeah. I gave one example that you come to clarify. Another example, وَمَا آتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ. Whatever the messenger brings, then take it, and whatever he forbids, then abstain from it. Likewise, we have the verse فَلْيَحْذَرِ الَّذِينَ يُخَالِفُونَ عَنْ أَمْرِهِ. Those who go against his instruction, the messenger's instruction, should beware in case a tribulation strikes them down. So you have many verses in the Quran that bring home that point.
Okay. And does the Prophet ﷺ himself, are there any ahadith where he instructs the ummah to follow his example? Because
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's enough there. I mean, to say otherwise is blind. Just to give a couple of simple examples, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma nahaytukum anhu fajtanibuh, wa ma amartukum bihi fa'tu minhu mastata'tum." Whatever I've forbidden you from doing, avoid it, and whatever I've ordered you to do as much of it as you can. So, absolutely.
Okay. And so, where does this concept actually come from then, that we don't need the Sunnah, we don't need the Hadith, the Quranists or whatever they call themselves? Where does that thinking come from then?
First of all, there's a misunderstanding of certain verses of the Quran. And there's a danger when you come to the Quran that you can misunderstand it. The Quran itself says, يُضِلُّ بِهِ كَثِيرًا وَيَهْدِي بِهِ كَثِيرًا. That Allah guides many by it, the Quran, but He also misleads by it. So there's a verse in the Quran, وَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ جَعَلْنَا بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ حِجَابًا مَسْتُورًا. And when you recite the Quran, we place a veil between you and those who don't believe in the next world. So there are verses in the Quran, that one or two verses that would seem to indicate that you should only rely upon the Quran and nothing else. But we say that's a misunderstanding of what's meant by the Quran, because the Quran is clear and categorical about referring to the Messenger. In addition, it seems that the question that Zahid read before about the authenticity of Hadith and different views about Hadith and different ways. So I think that seems to have caused a problem for some people, because one key issue that I think may be touched upon later, the Quran, the authenticity of the Quran is absolute. But the ahadith are not the same. They're not of the same degree in terms of authenticity. There are a small number that are, but many hadith are not. That does not mean we throw out the whole corpus of hadith. It just means we approach the hadith in a different way, and there are clear principles that are laid out by which we understand the hadith.
Okay, we've got a question on the screen. Can the Shaykh explain this verse? وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ.
وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. Yeah. MashaAllah, Humayun, Assalamu alaikum. That's Shaykh Humayun.
Okay, Mash.
Is he afflicted?
He's one of us. He's one of us, yeah.
We'll do dua. We'll do dua. You know.
Yeah, no, the dua. Whenever you go into the cursed city, you should always read the following dua. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal khaba'ith.
Whenever you go into Liverpool, just remember, there's no point in dua. Just go to what dua mean. End it there and then. Simple as that.
Okay. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ, MashaAllah, Humayun just pointed out the verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking about the Prophet, that he does not speak anything from himself. He does not speak anything from himself. And according to many of the ulama, that's not limited just to religious matters. Even in everyday worldly matters, the Prophet was guided in pretty much everything that he said.
Okay, so let's just go on to this in terms of the hadith, because is it true to say that a lot of the Sunnah that we follow is derived, or one of the sources is the ahadith? And a lot of people say that how do we know that which hadith is authentic, which is weak, which is fabricated?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what creates a lot of confusion, not just among those who don't follow or believe in that, even those who follow in the Quran hadith. And they said that leads to sectarianism as well. So if you could shed some light on, first of all, what is the classification of hadith, and what is the best way to understand which hadith is authentic and which is not?
A lot of these issues or confusion is a lot of this is caused by the simple fact that people don't bother to learn anymore. There's an elaborate system behind it. Like, when you study the sciences around hadith, there's so much detail in terms of working out that have been laid out and what's accepted and what's not accepted.
So there is a science behind it.
Yeah, and it's a science called mustalah al-hadith, or hadith theory, which is the principles that determine whether a hadith is authentic or not, and then what degree of authenticity is it. So there's a whole structure in place. And when you study that science, a lot of those issues just disappear straight away. Because we recognize, unlike the Quran, where everything is of the absolute level, there's a range so you have the highest degree, what's called a hadith sahih, where an authentic hadith where you have 5 criteria that must be met before it's accepted. And then you have a hadith slightly lower called hasan, which is an acceptable hadith. Then you have a range of ahadith that are called da'if, weak, and there's a range until you go down to a level that's known as shadid al-da'af, severely weak or fabricated, which are completely rejected. And then once they're graded based upon principles, then also in terms of application, then there's clear principles about which ahadith we use and how we use them and how we relate them to the Quran and so on. So there's an elaborate system in place. And it's just a simple fact that people are unaware of this. That's why they start looking at, there's a lot of confusion about hadith. With the scholars of hadith and the scholars of law, there's not a confusion. It's not confusion, just different ways of understanding it.
So which is the weakest and the worst example?
That's termed
what is that termed?
Mawdu', fabricated.
Mawdu'.
Is that an anagram of YN, whatever it is that says?
No, it's MUFC, fabricated fake. So we just call you
Shaykh?
Tariq Mawdu', which simply means the fabricated club, the false club, fake.
So when all the Scousers said that they won the league in November, yeah. Even though there's,
I'm on good behaviour today. I'm not talking to that devil in Ramadan.
I'm still going to the counselling sessions, Sheikh, after you've been bullying me all during Ramadan.
You know what? Your last two guests, I don't know what I think they must have thought you were crazy. Keep on going about Liverpool, because all it is, the more you talk about something, the more you love it.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you keep on speaking about Steven Gerrard tells me you have so much love for them, man.
I never mentioned that particular word, did I?
You know, when it comes to, for example, the ordinary person like myself or Brother Zahid, you know, who are not scholars and who are not students.
Brother Zahid is not an ordinary person. There's something wrong with him. But go on anyway.
Yeah. I just got sick to death of all them 13 titles we kept winning. I said, look, take it away. Yeah. You know, give it to them bin dippers in Liverpool. Let them have something. Feed the Scousers. Let them know it's
anyway. He's just waffling on. Go on, Sajid.
Yeah. Can I give these text messages out, because there's quite a few of them that are coming through now.
Go on.
So the first one, it says here, Salams, thank you for the show, brothers. What is the dress code? What is the Sunnah dress? Is it lungi? I don't know whether that's a mushroom pizza, and izar, or a long robe, which is closest to what the Prophet, peace be upon him, wore. And is it considered abandoning the Sunnah not to wear here in the UK? So I think someone's asking for, a dress code, and should we abandon it? Or
we're going to cover that, inshallah.
Yeah, should we walk around like Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars?
Oh, I think you should burn that shirt that's next to you. But anyway, go on, Sajid.
How naughty. Salam's question for Sheikh. Which scholars would you say are the strongest in Hadith today? And is this becoming the lost science among Sunnis? I think with regards to naming of scholars and stuff like that, what I would say is authentic Hadith and authentic scholars, they will not say to you, don't go read namaz behind this person. They won't condemn anybody. They will always put you on the right path. I know from our times when we had Sheikh Ibrahim Osiefer on this, so he never said anything bad about any other scholar. So as far as the question is concerned, I mean, the Sheikh can answer it, but as far as finding the is it a lost science of that? I think it could be, because like this Sheikh said, we just don't learn anymore, do we?
Okay.
Go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that, I think, it's kind of relevant, that question, because we are talking about hadith, and you were explaining in terms of the different classification of hadith. What I was going to ask is how does a normal person who's not a scholar or a student, do we need to understand the hadith?
No.
Or
the classifications, no.
Okay. So
go on.
No, because a lot, when you speak to a lot of young people, they will give you hadith and they'll say, oh, that's weak, and that's it's not from Bukhari and Muslim. So what should be our understanding if we haven't studied it in depth? And if someone sends us a hadith, should we question it? Should we ask what is the chain of narration, or should we just accept it? How do we understand if a hadith that we've read is authentic or not then, if we haven't studied it?
The first thing, going back to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions twice in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of remembrance, i.e. the people of knowledge, if you don't know. So in all areas of religion and in all areas of life, you always refer to back to people of expertise or specialism on any matter. So when we're referring to hadith, we go back to the ulama of hadith. So that's the first point. It's for you classifying.
I think the internet signal changed a little bit there, did it?
Bukhari is not a Muslim, or this is weak. And so, hey, what are you doing? Zay, you're up to something there, aren't you? Can you hear me?
I think your internet kind of broke up slightly, Sheikh.
Sheikh, I know you're in Liverpool, but can you have a word with them Scousers? Please, yeah? You can take the satellite dish.
Honestly,
do not take our broadband, yeah?
You know, all
take away the satellite dish.
This guy
but you can't take away our freedom. Let's keep our broadband. We'll have a country of our own, Scousers.
Honestly, Sadio, you know, when that lady came on speaking about depression and addiction and
abuse,
but you're speaking about psychological issues because there's somebody who's got some.
You caused them, Sheikh. I was all right before that. I was all right before that.
Yeah, anyway, we're having a serious discussion here.
I've kind of lost track of what the question was. Sorry, go on.
So if somebody's sending around hadith and somebody's saying this is weak or this is not acceptable, you shouldn't send it around and so on. The first thing is we always refer it back to people of expertise. Well, then having said that, because we're in the age of social media where everybody's just sending everything around and there's no verification, we do need to be careful.
Yeah.
We do need to be careful because people are sending around everything without knowing about authenticity. So as a general guideline, as a general rule, we would only accept a hadith if it's come from a recognized source. And there are known recognized sources across, and it's not just limited to Bukhari and Muslim. There are known recognized sources.
So what are the So what are the main books of hadith that we should be aware of? Because what we hear is, or on in the social media world, if it's not in Bukhari and Muslim, then it's not authentic. Because when it comes to
wrong, and that's wrong. The first thing that's wrong, because the first thing, authenticity is not enough. As a principle in the science of hadith, when we say a hadith is authentic, it just means it's of the highest level. But generally accepted amongst most of the scholars historically as well as now, even if a hadith is not authentic, we're still able to accept it with certain conditions and also in certain areas. So if a hadith is weak, we can still accept it when it comes to encouraging people to do good deeds, when it comes about warning, when it comes about narrations and stories of prophets and so on. The criteria is not that a hadith has to be authentic. So that's the first point. Then after that, there's a range of works that have recorded and transmitted the hadith. And it's far from limited to Al-Bukhari Muslim. Al-Bukhari Muslim of the highest standard. And that's the reason why people will speak regularly about it. But then you have others, such as, I'll list out the 6 key works, what's known in the science of hadith as Sahih al-Sitta, the 6 authentic works. You have Sahih al-Bukhari, that's considered the highest. You have Sahih Muslim. Then you have Sunan Abi Dawood. Then you have Sunan Imam al-Tirmidhi. Then you have the Sunan of Imam al-Nasa'i. Then you have Sunan Imam Ibn Majah. That's the 6 main works. Then you have other great works beyond that, like the famous Muwatta of Imam Malik. You have the Musnad Imam Ahmad, and so on. So there's a range of works that are there. So it's not as easy as saying just Al-Bukhari and Muslim Sahih.
So on that, in the same way, Sheikh,
sorry, before you continue, I've just reeled off some names, and it's only a handful of names. And if that's confusing to some of the listeners, all it tells you, unless you know, then don't interfere, don't step in. So that's all it's saying.
Yeah.
If you don't know about these things, then don't start saying you can accept this, you can reject this. Just leave it to those who know.
Yeah. And when it comes to Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, among the scholars, is it acceptable that just because it's in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, it doesn't mean that?
That's the question.
can it also be, because I was listening to a certain scholar who's quite famous on Facebook, I won't mention his name, and he was kind of criticizing a lot of hadiths in Sahih Bukhari, saying that, you know, they're not authentic, they're weak, you know, and they shouldn't, you know, they have no value. So is it a right thing for scholars to be saying that don't just accept the hadith just because it's in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim? Or would you say that's not a scholarly way of looking at it?
It's not. When we're speaking about Al-Bukhari and Muslim, there's 2 points to know. The first one, the general view of the Imams of Ahl Sunnah. Have you read that? Yeah, this guy's saying that guy in purple is class. I think they're referring to you. And I think that's wrong.
Can I ask? So that Chaudhry Don, is he one of the afflicted as well?
No, see this Hamza Wahid. There's something. He's like you. There's something wrong with it in his head.
Subhanallah, yeah, that's right.
He's like you. He's a lover of the devil. He's a filth follower.
Yeah,
that's why you're saying you're very good looking. Because I think he fancies you.
Yeah, maybe, you know.
Hamza's into his men. That's why.
Yeah, maybe. But the other brother, this is actually Lilac, brother. So I would actually get rid of that dodgy laptop that you bought from one of the Sheikh's cronies in Liverpool. The one that said on it, made by Apple and Microsoft together. That one, I'd get rid of it.
So in terms of, sorry, I keep getting sidetracked here, but in terms of what we were saying, in terms of, is it right for scholars to be criticizing, saying that certain books of Sahih Bukhari Muslim are incorrect? Sorry, you were saying, Shaykh, on that, yeah.
It's not a straightforward issue, and I'm going to try and not to get too technical about it. But there's a general agreement amongst the scholars of Hadith, of Ahl Sunnah, of the Orthodox way, that everything that's to be found in Bukhari and Muslim is authentic. That's the general view. With one or two finer points around that. So the view that you've mentioned, and unfortunately it's gaining currency now, that there's an attack against Al-Bukhari and more so against Al-Bukhari. And what I would say personally, I'm of a view, and mashallah, we're Muslims, so we love conspiracies. But I think there's an agenda behind it. Because if you undermine the authenticity of the highest works,
correct,
then you can go beyond, and then the attack comes on the Quran. These are almost like the core symbols of our religion. So we have to be careful about that. So the first point, I completely reject what that scholar said, and I know there's a number of them who are saying this. Completely reject that. But then, having said that, saying that every hadith in al-Bukhari is sound does not mean that you are required to act upon every single hadith in al-Bukhari. And that's where we start getting a bit more technical. Hadith being authentic doesn't mean that we're going to act upon it. There are certain authentic hadith which none of the ummah, none of the scholars have ever acted upon certain authentic hadith of the highest degree of authenticity. So there's another science that goes beyond hadith, which is known as usul al-fiqh, or legal principles, which is a system by which oh, that guy's nuttier than you. Yeah.
Brother, you know, if you want to stroke my head and get the wisdom of my 13 Premiership trophies that I've won, subhanallah, not a problem. I do keep it nice and shiny, as you can see. And
hold on. This Faraz boy, he's one of you lot as well. And he's a dirty devil. He's a dirty, perverted devil like you lot. So a hadith being authentic of the highest degree does not automatically mean we have to practice it. There's a whole system known as usul al-fiqh, legal theory, that brings together ayat of the Quran and hadith and tells you how it all fits in together. As an example, a brother before put up a question there about hadith about raising the hands. It's absolutely confirmed that the Prophet raised his hands, but there are many scholars who say we don't practice that because of certain principles.
And you know what, Shaykh, is it, this discussion we're having now, is this one of the reasons why there is so much division and there is so much hatred and sectarian within the Muslim ummah? Because if you look at certain organizations, they say they label everything as bid'ah. They said that these people, they're not following the Sunnah, they're not following the authentic Hadith. Is that part of the reason why the Muslim Ummah is, one, is divided, two, is sectarian, three, they can't stand it, they don't even pray namaz behind each other because they're saying that they're misguided? Is this one of the reasons why? Because they feel that people are not following the authentic Hadith and they haven't got the authentic Islam?
Sectarianism is more than that. It's not just about Hadith and so on. Sectarianism is a lot more. It's a lot more than that. Sectarianism comes down to an issue within the heart and mind. There are certain fundamental principles about which there's disagreements, but you can respectfully disagree. You can see, like a disagreement for which I have no respect to somebody like that guy over there sat in front of me. Like when it comes to filth, there's no respect in that. But when you got somebody saying, no, we have to follow Quran and Sunnah, and we don't. Yeah, I mean, see, like filth like that, no respect.
On that point, we've got some text messages.
Sectarianism is because of disagreement.
Shaykh, we've had a few text messages. I may as well clear them before they start piling up. The first one says, Salam, please ask Shaykh Haroon advice for people trying to follow the Sunnah but keep slipping. Signed by Mufti. It says here, signed by Mufti Riaz Banner.
Mufti Riaz Banner is a joke, and he's another devil follower like you, a bunch of devils. But just a quick answer to that, because even though Mufti Riaz is a bit dodgy, but it's actually a decent question he's finally asked. As with anything in religion, whether it's the highest obligations or certain sunnahs, if you keep on slipping, just keep on trying. You have a forgiving, merciful Lord. Just keep on trying.
Okay. Says here, Salam Fab Show, the general feeling among some Muslims is that...
was he talking about slipping? Is that what he's talking about?
Exactly.
Oh my God, you devils, man, together.
You gave a proper fatwa. Shame Stevie G wasn't listening. Salam Fab Show, the general feeling among some Muslims is in my lifetime is that the Quran is from Allah and so can't be disputed and has to be taken as a whole, and that the Sunnah is different because it can be taken or it can be left. Take what you want, leave what you want. Should we feel about this? How should we feel about this? And what should be our response to those who say this? So what they're saying is, look, in the Quran, it's, there's no dispute. Whatever is said is said. With Hadith, take what you want. If you don't want it, don't bother. That's it.
I'm just playing around with it, because I can give you verses in the Quran where it's not clear cut, where you need the Prophet to come and explain, and you also have certain Hadith which are absolutely clear cut. So it's not as simple as just saying the Quran is absolute. Yes, the Quran in terms of authenticity is absolute, but there are certain verses that can be understood in different ways. And so that statement, no, it's not.
Okay. What I wanted to do was just try to move this on a bit slightly if I can, because some of the questions
Let me read the questions outside, because otherwise you're gonna have too many. The next one here, it says here, just so that you know, if it gets sectarianism, obviously I'll read it, but we won't have to answer it. Salam, can you ask the Shaykh how to respond to those who say Abu Huraira can't be accepted as he narrated too many hadith? They state that even Sayyidina Umar, Sayyidina Aisha, and Imam Ali even reprimanded him for narrating too many hadiths. So that's one to put in.
Okay.
Just quickly to answer that, came from Shazay Masha. He's another mufti from Manchester. So from the cursed city. So that criticism was leveled against him in his own lifetime. So it's not a new criticism. He himself answered that by saying that while all of you were busy working and with your families and so on, he said, I was alone and I used to follow the Prophet around everywhere. So even though he only became Muslim towards the end, and he was with the Prophet for 4 years, towards the last years, all of his time was devoted to being with the Prophet. So he spent all of his time gathering a hadith. And also what we see clearly, he took many hadith from other companions. So,
Right.
so the criticism that's not a new criticism. It's a valid concern, but there's a clear answer to it, that he dedicated his life to gathering a hadith because he didn't have family, he didn't have anybody else.
Okay,
Okay.
Jazakallah.
The next question, it says here, please can you ask the Shaykh if Hazrat Imam Abu Hanifa was considered Hafiz of Hadith, and did he actually narrate mainstream Hadith himself?
Abu Hanifa was a muhaddith. He was a scholar of hadith of the highest degree. And there are clear examples of that in terms of him accepting and rejecting a hadith. And there's a science in hadith known as al-jarh wa ta'dil, which is analysis of the narrator's hadith, and he would reject certain narrators and state the reasons why. So when you study hadith, Abu Hanifa was clearly well versed in it. And it's a condition to be a mujtahid, a scholar of the highest level who can formulate a school of law, that he must have the highest degree of grounding within the science of hadith. So to say Abu Hanifa was weak in a hadith, which is the aspersion that's made against him, he may not be of the same standard as other, but he's not like your rank and file scholar. He was a scholar of hadith without any doubt whatsoever.
Right, great. Just a couple of other big shout outs going out here. Salam to Brother Mania and Brother Shabir. These are reflected. We'll do dua for them. These are
May Allah guide them. May they always stay on the straight path to Anfield. Carry on.
Yep, yeah. And do not go past go. Do not collect £200 straight to jail. Monopoly version of what happens in Liverpool. Another one here. That's rubbish. There are families watching. I can see comments. That's the guys commenting to respect.
In your heart, and we'll never walk.
Shaykh, you know that horrible noise that's in the background? Is that the internet signal again? You know that? I just want to make a little bit of a fatwa myself. You know that silly song that the Scousers sing, You'll Never Walk Alone? You know the origins of that? It's actually 100% true. They never walk alone. There's always a policeman next to one of them. There's always handcuffs. They never say, we'll never walk alone with handcuffs.
Your jokes are not even funny. Saj, you need to sack him, mate. He doesn't even tell funny jokes.
Okay, Saj, have you got any more questions, or do you want me to carry on?
Oh my God.
We have no more questions. We just need to help the Shaykh with his internet connection. Let me just get the right bit up. Yeah, there we go. Nearly there. Nearly there. Yeah, there we go. That'll help him. Right. Okay. Yeah. As the beers got sorted.
Go on, carry on.
Okay. Can I just make a statement here?
No,
I can't say nothing to the Shaykh or to normally. But, you know, I love the banter, but I think when we are trying to have a serious discussion, it kind of makes it difficult for me to ask this.
Saj, you are getting in the way of a very, very serious political discussion here. Yeah? The very fundamentals of faith are involved in it. The brother is actually saying...
Sergeant, I've told you before, if you want this to work, you need to get rid of that guy.
Okay. So, right. What I wanted to focus on now was in terms of what are the benefits of following the Sunnah? And then I wanted to ask you quite a few different kind of questions in terms of the different kinds of Sunnah, if we can. But we've still got a few questions that we need to answer as well. So first of all,
carry on.
What would you say, Shaykh, what are the benefits of following the Sunnah? And if I didn't follow the Sunnah, what would I actually miss out on?
Bismillah. The Sunnah comes to complete and to complement the Quran.
Okay.
They're the same message from the same source. So the benefit of following the Sunnah, other than the obvious statement, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the pleasure of the messenger and following the messenger. And which is that without following the Sunnah, your religion is incomplete. Without following the way of the Prophet, your religion is incomplete. The Sunnah came to, in a sense, fill in the blanks. Right, to give us those details. You cannot have a clear understanding what's required of you without the Sunnah. So the highest degree of reward comes through the Sunnah. The pleasure of the Lord comes through the Sunnah. Turning away from the Sunnah means that you're incomplete in your religion. You're incomplete in your religion. Your practice likewise will be incomplete.
Okay. Just before we go into the Sunnahs that we should be kind of trying to adopt in our daily life. Just one question that we always get is, how do we know? Because at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, you know, there were non-Muslims, you know, the enemies of Islam, Abu Jahl, they also had a full beard, they also had a turban, and they had a lot of things that so my question is, are some of the practice of the Prophet ﷺ, were they just for that time, or was it just for that culture? So for example, if I don't have a long beard and if I don't wear a turban, am I abandoning the Sunnah?
It depends.
Or do we need to follow those kind of Sunnahs as well? And do we get the reward for it?
It depends on the type of Sunnah that you're speaking about.
Okay.
So there are certain Sunnahs that are religious in nature.
Okay.
And especially those types where there's a clear instruction from the Prophet ﷺ. So the thing about keeping a beard, there's an instruction about that. So yes, he kept it. Yes, Abu Jahl kept it, but there's an instruction from the Prophet. So we're not going to say that's limited to those times.
Okay.
But we don't have clear instructions saying you must dress in this way, or you must keep a turban, or you must grow your hair in a certain way. So those are what are termed as adat. These are habitual practices where it's still good if you want to follow those, but they're not of the same degree. So the distinction would be where there's an instruction, then it's more significant. Where it's something that was a common practice, you want to still hold on to that, then mashallah, then it's a blessed thing to do, but there's no compulsion and there shouldn't be any pressure on these types.
So why are certain scholars and students emphasizing that the beard should be this long and so forth? And if it's not this long, for example, I've got a really kind of funky beard, okay, it may not be Sunnah, fair enough. But if it was like yourself, or if it was like Brother Zaid's, it's not 4 fingers long. So where does that come from? And why is Islam so kind of strict and rigid that it has to be a certain, you know, kind of measurement?
That's a point. MashaAllah, Suhail. MashaAllah. Something wrong with these boys. These are boys from Manchester, honestly. Something wrong with them. Like Zahid.
It's all right, brothers. We're using Google Translate. I know some people are...
Zahid, this guy wants to tickle you. I think he wants to tickle your nose as well.
Tickle my beard, yeah. Fair enough. Join the cruise for us. Somebody wants to tickle my head as well.
Yeah.
You know, we could make some money out of this. Is it?
It's the same guy. A'udhu
Yeah, yeah.
So Shaykh,
just Shaykh, before you mention that about the beard, it hasn't escaped me. But Brother Sajid, what's this Hulk Hogan look that you've been going with? It started yesterday.
Forget that. Please say wa alaikum salam. That's Qari Bilal there.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah.
Legend himself.
Should be in the show tomorrow, inshallah, yeah.
Oh no, I'm not coming on then.
Yeah.
Another devil.
Yeah.
Qari Bilal, you're a devil, man.
So Sheikh, in terms of
that's 2 pints of lager he's got lined up for us.
So
about the length of the beard. So the reason that some are going to be more stricter about it because of the understanding, they hold the view that the Prophet ﷺ, he kept it a fist length and he instructed for it to be kept in a certain way. Others are saying that no, the Prophet ﷺ kept it that way, but he didn't require it to be kept in that way. So it's just different understandings.
Okay, that's fine. So okay, if we can go into in terms of, because what I want you to focus the rest of the show really is in terms of how can we keep the Sunnah alive in our everyday life, okay? Because a lot of the things that we may do might not be according to Sunnah. So what are the things that we can follow? So let's start with some of them, Sheikh. So in terms of, from your understanding and from your knowledge, what would you say are some of the everyday Sunnahs that the ordinary person can try to adopt and follow? And then I'll go into detail.
Just then before that, just mentioning a general point on that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَمْ لَمْ يَعْرِفُوا رَسُولَهُمْ فَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرُونَ. Do they not know their messenger, or are they in state of denial? So the first thing, like when you start saying like what are the sunnahs the average person can introduce into his life and so on, what that verse tells is that we need to know the Prophet. We need to know him. We need to know us. We need to be known about him. We need to become acquainted with his life, his ways, his habits, everything about him. We need to become acquainted with it. Because you can't talk about following sunnahs without knowing about what is his way. And then there's another aspect to that, which is we should come to the sunnah with love. Like we should want to do it, not because somebody's like beating you into like you've got to do this, you've got to do that. No, he's my messenger. He's the perfect human being. I want to be like him. As simple as that. So once you come to from that perspective, you're not ramming it down anybody's throat. It's just this is an issue of love. I love the messenger, and you want to copy whoever it is that you love. And the Quran speaks about as uswatun hasana. And so when we talk about sunnahs, instead of just talking about specific sunnahs about the beard length and about the type of clothes you wear, his way was a way of mercy. His way was a way of love. His way was a way of tolerance. He was the most merciful people with his family, with his neighbors, and so on. So when you look at it in the broadest and the most generic terms, especially in these times where we need that sunnah of mercy to draw people in, he was not harsh in nature. Talking about sunnah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَبِمَا رَحْمَةٍ مِّنَ اللَّهِ لِنْتَ لَهُمْ. It's because of the mercy of Allah towards you, you were gentle towards them. Like, just imagine Zahid being in the time of the Prophet. Like, God help him. God help him. Like, it's only because we're Muslims we can tolerate a guy like this who's coming out with all this filth. But it's that message of love and tolerance and mercy that comes from the messenger. That's the reason that you want to draw people, you want to win people, because that was his way. Before starting going into specific details about how he dressed, and there's a general point of sunnah, which is the Prophet said, "Bashiru wa la tunaffiru, yassiru wa la tu'assiru." Give people a happy news. Don't drive them away. Make things easy for people. Don't make it difficult. These are the most broadest sunnahs that really need to be understood before we start getting into the specifics.
Okay, and also to understand that, I suppose we need to have an understanding of the life of the Prophet, where we need to understand and study the seerah of the Prophet. Okay, so for people,
I'll suggest on that. Just this is advice that I always try and give, because it's essential that we become acquainted and aware of who the Prophet is in the widest sense, not just specific details. In the widest sense, everybody should read the book Our Master Muhammad, written by Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin, an absolute gem of a work. Our Master Muhammad by Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin. It's 2 volumes, and it makes you fall in love with the Prophet. Like when you start seeing like what type of human being he truly was and all the different details about him. And then once you start getting more and more acquainted, then you don't need somebody to tell you, you got to do this, you got to do that. You'll be doing it anyway because he's the one that you love.
Okay,
yep. Exactly. Let me clear some text messages, brother. If you want to send us a text tonight, 07801 951 501. 07801 951 501. I want to just start with talking tonight about whether the sunnah is redundant or whether it's necessary. Part of the sunnah is manners and etiquette, which is a hallmark of a Muslim. I went to see a very, very good, close friend of mine, the elder brother Fiaz, and his son, who I had not really seen before for a long time. And Fakir, he owns a car place, Pavilion Motors. This little boy's attitude to me was of the utmost respect. Now, I didn't go there. I went there to ask to use something. But if I was buying something, because of his manners, he had impeccable manners. He had respect. He was calling me uncle. But more importantly, I had a lot of love for him. And I was very, very proud that I told his dad, I said, Mashallah, Fiaz, your son Fakir, I was so impressed with him. He then will obviously say to his son, so we can't underestimate that a lot of good things that we see come out of the sunnah. So this manners, and etiquette comes out of the sunnah. So when we say, is it redundant? Think, are your manners redundant? Is your etiquette redundant? Because that's where it comes from.
And just to add on to that, the highest praise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave in the Quran to the Prophet was that, وَإِنَّكَ لَعَلَى خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ, that truly you are on the most tremendous of all character. The highest praise of the messenger was his behavior and his character.
Okay, and on that point as well, just before is there hadith where the Prophet said that I was not sent but to teach the people the best of manners? Okay, and just on that point as well, Shaykh, for people who are watching this show, when it comes to manners, what would you say in summary, as to be a good, abiding Muslim in this society, what would you say are the best of manners that we should adopt when we are following the Sunnah?
The Prophet said in a general sense, he said, وَخَالِقِ النَّاسَ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. Deal with people in a beautiful manner. And when we look at his example, كَانَ يَعْفُو عَمَّنْ ظَلَمَ. Somebody wronged him, somebody did bad to him, he would forgive that person. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظَ. The Prophet ﷺ, when we look at his character, he never got angry for any personal grudges that he had. He didn't hold grudges against people. So it was all about how he dealt with people. He dealt with them where he would tolerate and overlook the wrongs that people did towards him. He never carried personal vendettas against people. He was the most forgiving of all people, because a container can only give out what's inside of it. So when he sallallahu alaihi wasallam's purity inside of him, he's always going to deal with people in the most pure and most beautiful manner.
Yeah, and there you've said that, that the Prophet ﷺ, never used to get angry. Now, for people who are watching this show, like myself, but the side of the people, we get angry. Okay, so when we get angry, what can we learn from the life of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of managing the anger, would you say?
Well, to go higher, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَلْيَعْفُوا وَلْيَصْفَحُوا أَلَا تُحِبُّونَ أَنْ يَغْفِرَ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. They should forgive and they should pardon people. Do you not want that Allah will forgive you? So, and here there's a stark warning, which is if you're not going to forgive and you're not going to overlook the wrongs of people, Allah's got a lot that He can hold against you on that day. So that's at the highest level. There's a warning coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You need to forgive, because His anger is something you can never bear, you can never tolerate. Then with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he displayed that to the highest degree. Personal issues, he's going to let go of it. When the Bedouin comes and he's yanking and he's dragging his shawl that it leaves a mark, he just lets go of it. He doesn't hold any grudges whatsoever. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us. He himself didn't lose control of himself, because that's not his nature. But he taught us, for example, that you start getting angry and you stood up and sit down, and if you sat down and lay down. He taught us that anger is fire that burns within you, and water extinguishes fire, so go and do a wudu. He taught us a dua, Allahumma adhib ghayza qalbi wa ajirni min mudillat al-fitan. Oh Allah, he taught us through the dua, oh Allah, remove from my heart the anger that's within my heart, and protect me from my affairs being all confused. So there are specific ways that the Prophet ﷺ, he advised about controlling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And linked to that point as well, and then I'll come to yourself, is linked to this point then is that what we see in society today is that when people disagree with someone and it creates a lot of arguments, whether it's in the family, father, son, husband, wife, what would you say from the life of the Prophet that we can learn when it comes to how to overcome differences and how to overcome disagreements and how to, like you said, not hold a grudge? What can we learn from the life of the Prophet and how can we then adopt it in our life?
When we look at his dealings with those around, even when we look at the dealings of the Prophet around him, even though he was absolutely guided by the truth in everything, he knew in an absolute sense right from wrong. Yet despite that, he's still overlooking the worst elements within his society. So the example that comes to mind is hypocrites, munafiqeen, hypocrites who carried hatred in their hearts for him. But the Prophet would not have them exterminated. He would not have them put to death, even though he knew who they were. He didn't want that type of rift and that type of killing to spread within his community. So even though he knew who the trouble causers were amongst them, he just let them be. He just let them be.
Someone is asking, can you repeat the dua that you just mentioned about anger?
No, hold on. What Zaid just put up there? A'udhu billahi minash shaitan. You need to control that guy.
Didn't do it. Hands free, look, Shaykh, not me.
That's Brother Nassim, yeah.
As in Nassim, where's he gone? He's as bad as that. Then I thought he was a decent guy.
You can't keep the truth. You can't hide the truth, Shaykh. Always remember that. No one can hide the truth.
In terms of the dua that you mentioned about controlling the anger.
وعفوا اللهم أذهب غيظ قلبي اللهم أذهب غيظ قلبي وأجرني من مضلات الفتن وأجرني من مضلات الفتن. O Allah, remove the anger from my heart and protect me from tribulations that will lead me astray. And it's encouraged that that's read 7 times after Fajr in particular, 7 times in particular after Fajr. Just to continue on that point, the Prophet tolerated hypocrites around him. When Sahaba came with different understandings, instructions, he would not categorically say, you're right, you're wrong. He sometimes would leave it. And he also advised us in a statement of his, in a hadith of his, that a person who's in an argument with somebody, if he stops, even though he knows that what he's saying is right, if he stops arguing, he will have the highest level inside the paradise. And
Subhanallah.
the highest, and that's where somebody's arguing, and you know what you're saying is right. You know what you're saying is right. But you still like, I'm not going to carry on this argument because it's not going anywhere. The Prophet promised that person the highest level in paradise. So that's like me trying to convince Zahid that he's on a false way, that he's just following the evil. So I just know there's no point. There's no point whatsoever.
But you know what, Sheikh? I think that you made an important.
Sorry, I was just taking my precaution. You know, I'm doing my social distancing and staying alert and all the rest of it.
Turn your camera off, please.
Yeah. So.
But you know, just on that important point, Zaid, that I'll come to. Sorry, is that hadith in itself and that examples that you've given, that you know, when you know that you're not going to get anywhere in this discussion, you leave it and you back down and you get the reward for it. Okay, I think we can all learn quite a lot from that, because there are a lot of disputes in our community, in our households, in our workplaces, in our business, in our masjids, and if we can just take that example away, you know, we can learn quite a lot from the life of the Prophet, from the Sunnah. Zaid, if you want to go to the text.
Yep. So we've got lots of text messages. The first one, Salam, brother. Can I ask a question for Shaykh? If you fall over when getting up from sajda, does it break your prayer? Ismail Patel from Manchester.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Okay, thank you. And another one here.
Sorry, what question Abdurrahman's asked is an excellent question.
What takes precedence, listening to your parents or following the Sunnah of the Prophet? Sheikh, if you want to go for that.
Simply put, listening to your parents.
Listen to your parents?
Yes, listening to your parents. If your parents are asking you to do something which is against the Sunnah, but it's not haram, it's not forbidden, then you still listen to your parents. That's a good question.
And what would the logic be there?
That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered you to obey them. He's ordered you, so it's come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Sunnah even high, but obedience to parents is highest, unless they're telling you to do something that's categorically haram.
Okay.
There's a few coming here, and one of them is, I'll read it. If you feel it's controversial, you don't have to answer it, but it says, how did the Sahih Bukhari hadith that Aisha narrated that the Prophet at 6 if she was actually 15? So I don't know. I think that's probably not one to answer. When does a debate become an argument, and how does one stop an argument if walking away isn't really an option? So if you can't walk away from the debate, how do you stop the debate?
Change the discussion. Change the discussion. And if that person is refusing to do that, then there's clearly an issue there, because that person just like he's overcome by his anger and so on. So it's better just not to engage and just stop talking at that point.
Yeah. Right.
The other one is, how do we reconcile with these misogynistic fatwa givers by authenticated scholars and the sunnahs of the Prophet? I don't know who they're talking to there, to be honest with you. Can you ask Shaykh to repeat the name of the author of the book that he recommended about the Prophet?
Shaykh Abdullah Sirajuddin. Abdullah Sirajuddin.
Salam, very good for that. Right. So there's a lot of text messages that we're having, and these text messages are they're not controversial, but what they are is, in my opinion, They're very negative. So they're asking, who is right? Brailvis, this, that. We never ever say who is right here. It's a matter for yourself to think about these things. What we don't do is to cast dispersions over somebody and say that the namaz cannot be read behind any of these imams. If you want to know about it, if you want to ask this question, then I would suggest go and see a scholar and ask them in person. Do not rely on this show, because we won't go for anything that's sectarianism.
What sect do you follow?
I've been following this Jamaat for a while now, Sheikh. It's nothing to. No. It is a proper Jamaat. If you want to join it, you can do. It's Jamaat Bela Kebab Akhri Samosa. So if you want to join it, you're welcome to. Yeah.
But just on that point, Sheikh, just to, a serious point, this is the mindset of a lot of Muslims today. Are we Sunni? Are we Wahhabi? Are we Deobandi? And people are so confused. So the point is, and I think the answer you're going to say, well, they need to study the deen. How do we get out of this mindset in terms of, we shouldn't go to that mosque, to follow the Prophet this way. This is bid'ah, this is shirk, this is kufr. These are the Gustakhi Rasul. How do we get out of this in terms of those people that follow the Mawlid are going to go to hellfire, and those who don't do Salatu Salam? How can we end this nonsense?
Yeah.
A greater attachment to the Sunnah of the Prophet in its real sense. When you understand that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did set boundaries. So it's not a free for all that you just do whatever you want with whoever you want. So there are clear boundaries in terms of what's right and wrong. It's not saying that you love everybody, but at the same time, you tolerate people with different understandings. So just taking that understanding from the Prophet, then inshallah ta'ala.
And how can it be that the Prophet ﷺ is one example, yet the Ummah is so divided and split and confused, and all this and the focus, Sheikh, is not on how can we benefit the community, how can we become a better person. And I see this on social media a lot. I get a lot of text messages about this, and I get a lot of emails about this. It's about these sectarian differences. And who would you say? So what would be your guidance to those people who are watching this show right now, who are focused in this kind of mindset? What would you say to them?
That you do need to know what's right and wrong in your belief. It's not about saying love one and all and peace with one and all and so on. You do need to know what's right and wrong within your belief, but once and learn that and study that properly and take that from rightly guided people of guidance. But then at the same time, take the sense of tolerance that the Prophet spoke, where he had hypocrites in his midst. Yeah, he tolerated them. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who dealt with them in the Quran. And also, where we are right now as a nation of believers, it's about priorities. When large numbers right now are abandoning the faith, then these type of differences are not the biggest issue that we have right now.
And I think what upsets me is I'm not a scholar. I'm someone who deals with mental health and so forth. But what I kind of upsets me is when you look at the challenges that we are facing as a community, whether it's mental health, whether it's pornography, whether it's extremism, whatever it is. But what are we focusing on these issues? That's what I don't understand. So I think, and the concept of unity doesn't seem to kind of exist, because, for example, I get on with people who are Shia, who are Sunni, who are Brahmin. I don't care. At the end of the day, we might disagree on certain things. That's fine. Me as I always disagree on a lot of things, but that doesn't mean we hate each other. We just disagree on certain issues. That's fine. But we still respect each other as brothers, right? And we both sport United, so we're all right. Okay. But the main thing is,
why would you respect Zahid's views? I don't understand.
You know what is Zahid is a very it's a person, it's a unique individual. His sense of humor, his knowledge, his football knowledge, he's got
no football knowledge, mate. He's as ignorant as it comes.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's right.
Zahid, you want to
I've got some text messages here. And don't worry, Sheikh, if I get my car's wheels back from the last time I went to Liverpool, I'll come and visit you into Liverpool. And we'll go and see Brother Faraz, and we'll have something to eat. And then, You know, you can go past the city. Because you want. I know you're desperate for the Premier League. We can show you 13 of them over there, or even more. You know, so don't worry. It says here, Shaykh says different interpretation on things such as the length of beard and wearing the turban. Then have said, get to know the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I love everything about them. We also know from Hadith that you must love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than anything. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were perfect and were walking, talking Quran. So how can they be interpretations of the length of beard, turban, etc., when we know from various hadiths and the description of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the beard was long and that they wore white turbans majority of the time. If you love someone, you imitate them. If they were our role models, as many times we've said on Let's Talk, then we should imitate them. Just like kids imitate the great footballers such as Giggs, Ronaldo, and Cantona.
You have to mention those names, then.
Well, I have to read the text messages, yeah?
No, you shouldn't have. That killed the question, that was a great question until the last few words. Just on that point again. So, yes, I mean, first of all, the turban of the Prophet, yes, he normally wore white, but he also wore like black, for example. It's confirmed he wore yellow turbans and so on. So it's not as straightforward as saying that. So even in the description of the turban of the Prophet, it's not. And then there is nothing categorical that states you must wear that. Like, he didn't order you must wear. Yes, imitation, that's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely a beautiful thing. And then with the length of the beard, it's a genuine difference of opinion among scholars. Imam Shaykh, Imam Malik, Abu Hanifa, and Imam Ahmed. So when somebody comes and says, how can you? These were people who understood the religion to the highest degree. If they're now coming and saying, yes, the length of the beard was particular. There was a specific length of a fist length, but they're now different. Some are saying you must keep it that way. Others saying no, it's better, but you're not required to keep it that way. So we respect the differences of the scholars of Ahl Sunnah, of the Orthodox way, and we're not going to say in any way whatsoever that any of these imams are misguided because they've understood the Sunnah in a different way.
Isn't that the problem, Shaykh? We seem to be obsessed with the external, how we look. But surely the Prophet, his message was more than that. His message was more than the size of the beard and the turban. It was the behavior, it was a system, it was a way of life, it was the manual of life.
To add to that, you're absolutely right. But to add to that, in no way does that lessen the outward. The outward is a blessed thing. It's a blessed thing.
Yeah, but I think people see it as something compulsory, don't they?
No, if anybody's saying that.
No, I think what the Shaykh is saying. Yeah, I think what the Shaykh is saying is right, that some things are not the direct interpretation, like the beard issue has been going on for years now, how big it should be. But some things are what they are. Some things aren't. So,
no, but on Sajid's last point, you're right. Unfortunately, some people are going to make this out that, yes, the Prophet did that, and you must do that, and there's no other way other than that. We try our utmost to follow the Prophet in every detail. But then at the same time, we accept that there's different understandings about why exactly the Prophet did that. Are we actually required to do that in the exact same way, and so on? There's different understandings, and that has to be tolerated.
Yeah, because we know, brother, when the Klopp Shaykh is on, we always explain to him that some things are the same, so they can't be the same, can they? We've always said to him.
I'm being serious today. I'm not talking to him. Saj, any further questions?
I've got loads of questions. I just want to ask them. Okay, so before I go into any questions, we don't want to ignore the text. If you've got any more text, then I'll go ahead.
Question that came from Ijaz Iqbal, and that was a good question. If you can trace that back, it was up on the screen before.
Okay, I'll have a look at it. Inshallah.
We'll find it. It came from Ijaz Iqbal.
Okay, I'm making note of that. Zaid,
here's one. Yeah. It says here, how does one absolutely destroy the ego? Is there any zikr that could be beneficial?
Subhanallah. I don't know the answer to that. Well, it's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Allah.
Fine. Now, go ahead.
I was Shah Zeb from the Theatre of Dreams saying salam to the Shaykh there.
Theatre of nightmares, mate.
They can't. Nightmares for you, obviously. You know. Yeah, quite a few nightmares. Come to think of it.
No, the devil comes to you in your dreams, mate, doesn't he? Well, go on.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
some more. There's some more text messages here. It's saying, with regards to the Sunnah and the Quran. I know that you've mentioned this, but it didn't sink in. At work, I have people and we do have discussions around religion. And luckily, the people in my works are people of faith, although not Muslim. What they say is that Bible, God's word, Quran, God's word, everything else is not God's word, therefore cannot be trusted. Is that still not the case? I know we mentioned this very earlier on, but somebody's saying about these hadiths and everything, about them, you know, how can we know that they're trusted? How is the authenticity? I know you explain this. Is there a simpler way of explaining it again? Sorry.
Well, in relation to that question, first of all, saying that the Bible is God's word and the Quran is God's word as though they're one and the same is completely false. It's completely false. It's part of our faith, and it defines our faith, that the Quran, it came and abolished everything that came before it. And the Bible, as it is now, is not the original gospel that was revealed to Prophet Isa alayhi salam. So to say that they're one and the same is completely against everything that we believe. So they're not the same. The Quran is the absolute word of God. The Bible has remnants of it in there, but we don't know what they are. So we're not gonna take that as a reliable source. The Quran is the absolute word of God. The Sunnah, what we believe, is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which he then expressed. The Prophet then chose how to say it. So here's something we didn't mention at the beginning. What's the difference between Quran and Sunnah? The Quran is revelation of meanings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the words as well also from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such that the Prophet did not have any input in the words of the Quran. Whereas the Sunnah is revealed meanings but words chosen by the Messenger. So yes, the Sunnah is not the words of God, but the meaning is still revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, Sheikh, and this question came in earlier. It's just come to light now. What the question was is the Quran is direct revelation that came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet. The Prophet then, peace be upon him, through Sunnah, explained, is that the Prophet's, how did he get to understand this himself? Did somebody teach or explain this to the Prophet, or is it the Prophet himself's interpretation of it?
No, it's not his interpretation. The Quran itself says, ثُمَّ إِنَّ عَلَيْنَا بَيَانَهُ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that once we've revealed the Quran to you, we're going to explain it all to you. So the Quran actually tells us all of the explanations of the Prophet came are not personal interpretations. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving those understandings. And one thing that should not be forgotten is that the Sunnah was revealed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's just that the words were his own choice, but the Sunnah, which is explanation of the Quran, was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ.
Okay,
by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or by an angel?
By Allah through Jibreel.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and just wanted to go on to this point, because in terms of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, when we have issues and problems where there are setbacks and they are really bad things that happen in our life and we feel quite low and we feel quite depressed, how can we look at the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and what guidance can we get from there?
Well, one answer, like daily through Ramadan, I've been doing a class daily with study of the Quran, study of the Juz of the Quran. And one thing that you see is that as you go through the stories that are spoken of from the Quran, the prophets that have gone before, the background to that is that the Prophet suffered the most difficulties in Mecca in particular. Yeah. Whenever he was going through those hard moments, Allah revealed stories of prophets who went before to help him through those difficulties. So you take the Quran as the example. If you're going through hardship in your life, read about the Prophet and read about how he coped with those and how his faith, more than anything else, helped him come through the hardest moment in his life. So when you go through some real dark moments in your life, like you've lost, for example, a young child, he lost pretty much all of his children. He had to bury all of his children, with the exception of, say, the father. He had to bury all of his children with his own blessed hands. So when you look at, like, you're getting abused and somebody's come and stoned you and you're getting driven out of your home, he went through all of that. Attempted assassinations against him, like multiple attempts to kill him, poison from the Jewish woman. Like, so when you look at his life, it wasn't like a rose garden. His life.
So what did the Prophet do then when all these things happened to him? What did he do in terms of his behavior, in terms of his supplications, in terms of his mindset, and that we can learn from?
Just a supplication. Like, when he came out of Ta'if, which was one of the hardest moments in his life, where they stoned him and driven him out, and he's now sitting in a garden, and the dua that he made there is just absolutely phenomenal. It's known as Dua al-Karb. It's a dua to read in times of distress. And part of that dua tells you about the understanding of the Prophet. At that moment, he just says, as long as you're not angry with me, then I don't care. Like the Prophet speaking about it, he's teaching and understanding that the difficulties that we go through in our life may well be a manifestation of divine anger, or it may be Allah raising you and cleansing you for you to become a better person through it. So his only concern is that all I hope is that I'm not getting punished through this. And that's one of the greatest lessons we can ever take, because he wasn't getting punished. But you and I, we maybe go through some difficulty because of some wrongs that we've done ourselves. So at that point, we just need to recognize that the most important thing for me to understand, as long as you're not angry with me, then it doesn't matter what's going on in my life.
Okay.
Jazakallah.
Also, Shaykh, just one question, and then I'll go to Zada as well then, is sometimes in life you have to make difficult decisions and you're not really sure what to do and what decisions to make, whether it's to do with business, whether it's to education, whether it's to with marriage. What can we learn again from the Prophet's life in terms of how do we go about making decisions that we're not sure about?
What we learn from the life of the Prophet is simply twofold. The Quran here gives us one indication, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ, that whenever you have any issue in your life, consult and take advice from people around you. When you're confused about a matter, consult from people who can help you through that, who are sincere and genuine people, who have love for you, and they're going to give you good advice. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, the Prophet ﷺ, he would teach his companions in every decision that they made, however small, to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The common prayer, istikhara. Istikhara prayer for most people now is only ever done for marriage. Yeah. But the Prophet ﷺ, it's become like a marriage prayer now, where the Prophet ﷺ taught them any decision you have to make, a new business, you want to buy a new house, you want to move city, whatever the issue may be, the Prophet ﷺ taught them, pray istikhara. So simple, istikhara. From the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, take advice from people, take advice from Allah. And then he says, then the Quran says, فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Then once you've made a clear decision, then leave it to Allah, rely on Allah.
Subhanallah, yeah, there's been 31 years of istikhara going on in Liverpool, I believe, yeah. Lot of istikhara that.
You know what? I'm not even talking to you, forget you.
Right, got a text message. Can you ask the Shaykh if we should take Islam from books or scholars? As many people today want to do their own research.
Yeah, scholars, but rightly guided people of guidance. I try and find, and they're a rarity. They're a rarity.
How do you know someone is, because every scholar that you think, oh, you know, he's got a turban on, he's got a big beard, he speaks good Arabic, he does really fiery speeches. How do you know which one is, because they all sound brilliant.
I'll ask you a question. You want to go to do a course at university or college and so on, how do you make a decision? How do you make a decision about which course is the best and which people to go and study it? You do research, you consult, you ask people who are in the know. And then at the end of that, like what we just said before, you consult and then you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same with scholarship. Like, it shouldn't be just a random decision based upon certain superficial criteria. Consult the people of knowledge, those who are known to be people of guidance, and then consult Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Thank you.
Very good. On that point, Shaykh, what I would say, and it's my opinion here, I think these people who think that they can study Islam without any kind of cross-referencing and double-checking, it's a scary thing. Where are you, I'm certainly not a scholar, but I went to a Muslim couple and I looked at what their son was reading, and I just did it not by being any kind of teacher at all. And I realized that the what is blatant, what their child was reading was the opening passages of the Quran, which had extra bits of Arabic added to it. When I saw these extra bits of Arabic, I said, where did this Quran come from? And when I realized this Quran had been, there are a particular sect who called themselves Muslim, it was that sect. So
Yeah.
had I, and you know, as I said, Allah knows best, but I said, listen, don't be reading that. Get the authentic Quran. You need to have, there is nothing I can think of where you need a professional qualification that you can do by yourself. Because if you could, I'm sure we'd all be dentists and doctors if we could just get a few books and go onto YouTube. It's not possible.
That's the point. Again, there's no sphere in life where you do such a thing. You would never claim that I'm a doctor or I'm a dentist or I can just self-study at home and I'll just go through books and I'll do research online. Like people come and ask questions, or people say, I researched on Google, I went online. But you would never do that with anything else in life.
No. Is the problem that we haven't got a recognized qualification?
Problem is just egos are out of control. Pseudo-intellectuals. People think I passed a degree at university, so I'm competent to understand the Quran, even though the Quran is the highest of all speech. So the degree at the university ain't going to help you with that.
Okay.
Let me get these text messages. It says, to what extent is culture important? Is the culture at the Prophet's time important? Should we think of Sunnah as our culture?
Islam did not come to wipe out culture. It did not come to make all cultures one and the same. But so as long as the culture does not contradict any key principles in our religion, then that culture is accepted. That culture is embraced. And that's why when you travel from Morocco to Indonesia, you'll see different. The essential message is the same, but different variations on the same message.
Yeah.
Sorry, Zahid. Just to clarify, so every culture is allowed up until it doesn't contradict the teachings of Islam.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll read out some salams here. Another one. Salam going out to Brother Irfan Khan, who used to be one of our presenters. Brother Irfan Khan, I hope you and your family are okay. It's a shame that you can't open the front door and smell either garlic being fried or any salad or any tempeh anymore. Another one here, my niece, Mariam Makbul. Big salam alaikum to you, listens to the show all the time, says that she really enjoyed yesterday's show. Thanks to Aves and Umera for the iftari food. Jazakallah khair. Salam alaikum to Brother Muhammad Fiaz for listening to us, or should I watching to us from Pakistan, and all to the guys on the Liverpool Man United group, brothers Ayub, Brother Wahid, Arafat, and Mani and Shabzi. All these, salam alaikum to all of you guys. Thanks very much for listening into the shows, and a couple of other ones that are coming on here. Brother, can I ask the Shaykh, to what extent was the Prophet taught by the angel Jibreel?
What? Sorry, I didn't catch that. To what extent was he what?
To what extent was the Prophet, peace be upon him, taught by the angel Jibreel?
The Quran states, "Allamahu shadidul quwa." The Quran states he was taught by the one who was mighty in power. But taughting here is not the standard ustad and tilmeed relationship, the teacher-student relationship. It's not that standard. Jibreel alayhi was a conveyor. He passed on the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so from that sense, and in doing so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting a pattern for us. That when you have the Prophet who's a supreme being, and Jibreel alayhi is somebody who comes to serve the messenger, yet still he's passing all of that information on. It tells us the central nature of ensuring that you take from somebody, even if that somebody is lesser in status or rank than you. because undisputed, Jibreel is an angel. The prophets are the supreme beings. So the Prophet's superior to Jibreel alayhi salam, yet still he's coming and conveying the message. So
Yeah.
we don't view that as a standard teacher-student relationship. He's conveying the message, but still there's something in place there that has to be imitated.
And on that point as well, Shaykh, because this sometimes turns into some kind of a sectarian issue where the Prophet ﷺ, was he unlettered? Was he illiterate? Was he uneducated? And even using these words don't sound right when you are describing the Prophet. So what is the correct way to describe it then?
The Prophet ﷺ is termed in the Quran as An-Nabi al-Ummi, which literally means the unlettered prophet. The unlettered prophet. And we also have a verse in Surah Al-Ankabut where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا كُنْتَ تَتْلُو مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ, that you are not able to read before, nor could you write with your hand. So the Quran is clear that the Prophet did not read or write. There's a strong view that's held by many of the scholars that was originally the case, but towards the end of the life, the Prophet was given knowledge of vast matters, that he left this world being able to read and write. You are right, though, the wording is important because it's an issue of etiquette. The Prophet was sent in order for us to honor him and esteem his rank. So when we think about the Prophet not reading and not writing, this in no way is that meant to be like you and I. Let's say you and I are literate, can't read. That's a sign of ignorance. That's an ignorant person, because for human beings, the normal human beings, mere mortals like you and I, if you can't read or write, it means you're uneducated.
Yeah.
But despite the fact that the Prophet did not read or write, he came with the highest of all revelation. So that's more of a proof of prophecy. Like Allah is showing us that he didn't have a father who educated him. He didn't go to any schools. He didn't read and write. He wasn't reading from any scriptures that are around. Despite that, he came with something that no human being can replicate. So we should not see that in any way as a slight against the Prophet, something indicating his rank as being lesser. Rather, it's actually about the opposite, about raising the revelation. Like, mashallah, we can all read and write, yeah? Like, what can we do with the Quran? Like, not a single human being can come anywhere near the Quran. So that's actually a proof of the greatness of the message that he brought. And that verse ends by saying, إِذَنْ لَارْتَابَ الْمُبْطِلُونَ. That if you were able to read and write, then those who want to reject the revelation would be able to cast doubt against it, saying that you copied it, saying that you read it from other places.
Okay, Jazakallah. I just want to mention just 1 or 2 points that I'll come to side as well. And I think we get quite a few of these that I'm getting anyway. I think people want to know in terms of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, in terms of his etiquettes when it comes to what did the Prophet ﷺ do when he went to sleep, and what did the Prophet ﷺ do when he woke up. I'm trying to get quite a few of these in terms of, was there any particular action the Prophet ﷺ did before he went to sleep, during the sleep, and when he woke up? Is anything in particular that we should be following in terms of the Sunnah?
No, there's quite a few things around that, and we should try our utmost to do that. So we know, for example, that the Prophet ﷺ, before going to sleep, first thing, he would go to sleep after he's prayed Isha. Soon after he's prayed Isha, he wouldn't stay awake late into the night. He would read certain surahs in the Quran, like Surah Al-Mulk, Surah Alif Lam Mim Sajda, and then he would make sure that he's in a state of wudu before going to sleep. He would lay down, he would read the protective surahs like Ayat al-Kursi, like the 3 Qul surahs at the end of the Quran. He would blow into his hand and rub over his body, washing away anything that's more for you and I, washing away the effects of any wrong that we've done. So we go to sleep in a pure state. Our bodies and our souls are in a pure state. He would lay down on his right side, facing the Qibla, with his hand on his cheek, and he would make sure the last thing that he do before going to sleep is dhikr of Allah. And he falls asleep in the state of dhikr of Allah. And when he wakes up, he does the same. The first thing, he would read the dua of going to sleep. The first thing when he wakes up, Alhamdulillah alladhi ahyana, praise be to the one who gave me life after death. He would use a miswak. He always kept his miswak next to him. He would use a miswak. First thing he does when he wakes up is that he goes and does a wudu, and he prays tahajjud, and then later on he'll pray fajr. So his sleep and his waking up is all worship. The way it's done, it's all worship.
And there seems to be hadith that people quote a lot, that before the Prophet used the last two verses of Surah Al-Baqarah.
Surah Al-Baqarah, yeah, very important to read those, yeah. And he said that those two verses, kafata, will take care of him, which may well mean he's protected. That person's protected at night by those two verses.
Okay. And also, when we look at the life of the Prophet, and we talked about etiquette, one thing that comes up, the Prophet always used to have a pleasant smile on his face. And I think a lot of people today have forgot how to smile. Okay.
Absolutely. Especially Zayd's, like we haven't seen any victories in a long time. Poor depressed guys. So. Yeah, needs to learn Sunnah smiling.
Okay. And
absolutely.
When it comes to the Sunnah of the Prophet, I think one thing I've also kind of picked up was not just the worship, but in terms of the ibadah, but the Prophet in terms of his behavior. When someone was sick, he would go and actually visit them. Yeah. And I think in that terms of behavior, how important is that, would you say? And what can we learn? And what is the benefit for us when it comes to seeing someone who is sick? Why is that? Why has the Prophet put emphasis on that?
The first thing is that the Prophet listed that as one of the duties that a Muslim has towards another Muslim. In his time of weakness, that you're there to help him, to support him. If nothing else, just to help him come through that difficult moment. So you're there as a support for that person to get through the difficulty that he's going through. So the Prophet spoke about that as a haqq al-Muslim. It's a duty for a Muslim towards his brother, that he visits him while he's sick. When he goes to visit him, the Prophet mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, O son of Adam, I was sick and you didn't visit me. I was sick and you didn't visit me. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking. I was sick and you didn't visit me. And that person will say, how can you be sick when you are the Lord of all the worlds? And the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, my slave such and such was sick and you didn't visit me. Had you visited him, or you didn't visit him, had you visited him, you would have found me present there. Like the sick person has a special degree of divine mercy around him. So when you go to visit a sick person, you're surrounded and enveloped by mercy, a unique mercy that comes to that sick person because of the weakness that he's going through. And that's why it's even mentioned that when you go to visit a sick person, your du'as are answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you're around that person, it's a du'a mustajab, it's an accepted du'a.
Jazakallah. We've talked about the sleeping, and we've talked about when possible. What about when it comes to eating and drinking? What can we learn from the Sunnah of the Prophet? Is there anything that we should? Because a lot of people emphasize sit down when you're eating, when you're drinking water, don't drink it standing up. Or is there a certain etiquette when it comes to the Sunnah that we should be abiding by?
We've had a few of these asking about the drinking of the water, sitting down. What's the story behind that? And also, before we answer that, Shaykh, there's a few people talking about the smile as well. So we just thought we'd help you out there.
Oh my God! Stop showing me the face of the devil, mate.
But Shaykh, even you will have some respect for Sir Alex, won't you? Even though you might be biased, you will have some respect for him for what he's achieved, surely.
Saji, I thought you were a decent guy, but you're like him as well.
I'm just trying to say that he's a successful person. Anyway, George.
No, he's not.
Sorry. In terms of the eating and drinking, what would you say in terms of the Sunnah of the Prophet?
There's descriptions about how he would eat, how he would sit, the hand, all of those details, which are well known. But the one, mashallah, and here often there's a lack of perspective in terms of Sunnah. So mashallah, you'll sit down when you're eating, you'll eat with your right hand, or you'll eat with fill, and the Prophet forbade that. Right? So
sorry, say that last bit again, Sheikh.
So you'll eat sitting down, you'll maintain all the Sunnah sitting down and so on, but you're going to stuff yourself. And the Prophet forbade that. So you talk about etiquette. The etiquette is that you only eat enough that will keep you going and you don't overeat. And that's forbidden in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kulu washrabu wa la tusrifu. Eat and drink and don't be excessive. And the Prophet said the worst container that can be filled is the stomach with lawful food. So, mashallah, all of these sunnahs about eating are important because we never devalue. We never. Aman, my God. Aman, when I see you next time, I'm going to slap you.
Violence, domestic violence. Sister Jamila, get him reported.
And you know, when it comes to the eating that you mentioned, and you know, is this authentic hadith that we've talked about before, the authentic side, that the stomach should be split up in three? There should be one third should be food, third should be drink, and 1/3 should be left empty. Is that from the Sunnah of the Prophet?
Yeah, but even that, it speaks about a maximum, not a minimum. Because the Prophet in the Hadith, he says that it's enough for the son of Adam that he eats luqaymat, just a few bites that will straighten his back. And then he says if he's unable to do that, then 1/3 food and 1/3 drink and 1/3 for breathing. Let me just add, the sister Alina there's asked a good question. Visiting the sick with corona, would it be better to protect them by not going? Absolutely, because it's a contagious disease. So then absolutely the precautions have to be there. So because we can't go and visit people of corona, then make dua for them.
Yeah. Just going back to the etiquette of drinking water, because this question comes 1,000 times. Is there anything wrong with drinking water standing up? Because people make a really big deal out of this.
No, it's not, because the Prophet himself did that. It's not wrong. So Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, on one occasion, is in Kufa in Iraq, and he stood up drinking.
Okay.
And he said, I'm doing this because I saw the Prophet doing this. So undoubtedly, it is the more normal practice of the Prophet sit down and drink. But you cannot say somebody's done wrong, because then you're ascribing wrong to the Prophet.
Okay.
And the same with eating as well. It's not forbidden to eat standing, but although the normal practice of the Prophet wants to sit.
Yeah.
Just to clarify one thing the Shaykh said, then I will come to right now, is, you know, when he said the Prophet when he used to use the miswak, so nowadays use the toothbrush, is that the same equivalent, or do you get more reward for the miswak? And in this age, why do we need the miswak?
See, miswak has two elements to it. One is simply cleaning the teeth. And so from that perspective, the toothbrush serves a purpose. But there is something uniquely blessed about that particular stick. It's known as Oud al-Arak. It comes from a particular tree. So there is extra rewards about that. So if a person uses a toothbrush, he's fulfilled one sunnah. But the other sunnah, he's not fulfilled that, and he doesn't have the maximum reward.
Okay.
And the third thing about the miswak stick is it not for bashing wives over the head with if they haven't ironed or
No, it's about poking United fans. That's what it's for.
Some text messages come through. Can you ask the Shaykh how Dawa should be given? Nowadays, we have people debating others in parks, screaming and shouting at each other. Others hand out pamphlets in the city centre claiming this is Dawa. So, a question there about Dawa. Another one here, Islam. Is it wise to do tahnik for a newborn child in the current COVID situation, or is it better to omit this sunnah?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last time. I was reading a man's question.
Yeah. So the last one was Islam. Is it wise to do? It says here tahnik for a newborn.
Oh, tahnik.
Yeah, tahnik. Sorry. For a newborn, given the current COVID situation, or is it better to omit this sunnah?
That's sunnah, because that's just about rubbing dates upon the gum of the child when it's born. So father's going to be there. So it doesn't. If you're talking about tahnik, taking the child to a sheikh and so on, that's But the original sunnah of tahnik is at the point of birth that some date is gently rubbed upon the gums of the child. So somebody's going to be there who can do that. So that should still be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the first question is, how do you do? What's the correct way of doing da'wah? Some people go in the park and have a debate. Some people hand out leaflets. What would you say is the best way of doing da'wah today?
There has to be a message that is conveyed, but that message needs to be conveyed in the wisest manner, as stated by Allah in the Quran, in a manner that will draw and win people over. وَدُعُوا إِلَى سَبْئِلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ, call to the way of your Lord with wisdom. قُولَا لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا. Musa and Haroon are told to go to Fir'aun and speak to him in a gentle manner. So there has to be thought and wisdom, like shouting and screaming and so on. That's not the way. It's about good words, about beautiful words, and also demonstrating the way of the Prophet and how you are. But ensuring that in all ways your words are beautiful, your behavior is beautiful. That's a da'wah of the messengers.
Okay, Jazakallah. Just before I go to that again, one thing that comes up as well is when we're talking about etiquettes and manners, what do the Prophet say in terms of speaking good or keeping silent? Because sometimes we haven't anything good to say, but we have to have the last word. So what can we learn from the Sunnah here?
The Prophet ﷺ, he told us, whoever believes in Allah and the last day should only speak good or remain silent. And he also told us, part of the goodness of the Islam of a person is that he leaves things that don't concern him. He doesn't involve in discussions about matters that don't bother him, don't concern him. So the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to limit what you say unless you absolutely need to say it. And those who used to sit around the Prophet, they would say that when we're sat with him, he's there, he's engaging with them. If they're speaking about some worldly matters, he will smile with them. He's there with them. But when speaking about Allah and the next day, he'll get serious with them and so on. So he's there, he's engaging them. But he wasn't someone who just talked and talked and talked. He whatever he said, it carried weight with it, and it had a purpose behind it. But he wasn't just somebody who spoke loosely. He would measure his words and only say something of significance.
Yeah, and when the Prophet ﷺ used to meet people, like nowadays we see someone we say, "Yo, wagwan," and people will kind of touch and stuff like that. Is there anything wrong with that, or is it best to say "Assalamu alaikum" and hug the person?
Of course, saying "Assalamu alaikum" is the best. Hugging, maybe not. We need to keep our distance right now. Definitely, saying "Assalamu alaikum" is the best way. But it depends where people are. Like if you know he's somebody who understands and who's practicing and so on, and also it's an accepted culture amongst Muslims, so you say "Assalamu alaikum," it's a standard. But if somebody feels like he's got to show up a certain way, he's got a particular rep to maintain and so on, so you need to start talking that way, then khalas, inshallah. There's no obligation in giving salams. There's only an obligation in answering it. Wallahu a'lam. But then again, you deal with where they're at.
Zaid, thank you.
Yeah, just go to some of the text messages. What this one is saying is, in terms of the Sunnah, some people say that you should only follow certain Sunnah. Is this the case, or should we follow them all?
Try your best to follow.
That's quite a big question, isn't it? Yeah, because you know,
whatever Sunnah you can maintain, then fulfill that. Whatever Sunnah you can maintain. Like you shouldn't try and be selective and just pick and choose what Sunnahs that suit you best. But realistically, inshallah, we have the highest aspirations, but we are going to fall short on a lot of things.
You know, on that point, for example, the hijama, that is Sunnah. But again, where do you classify, how important that is compared to etiquette, manners, behavior, the beard, the thobe? So I think that's what the question is probably, alluding to, is that where do you classify what's important and what's not? Is hijama something that should be following? Is that more important Sunnah than wearing the turban? Is that more important wearing Sunnah than etiquette? How can you prioritize?
That's the whole system of Sharia. And when you study, when you learn about these details, you'll be told exactly what's the priority of these matters. Like hijama is a medical practice that they used to have at that time. And the Prophet spoke well about it. But if a person doesn't do it, there's no issue whatsoever about that. Wearing a turban was the dress code at that time. Like it's been lost now. If a person wants to return back to that, it's a blessed thing to do. So the more and more you learn about the way of the Prophet, you'll see where everything fits in. And you'll see what's the more important sunnahs, and you'll see what are sunnahs that have value but are not of the highest degree.
Okay. And that question we got on the screen there, are there any hadith about the jokes of the Prophet or his humor?
Yeah. There's a whole section in books of hadith about the jokes of the prophets.
Really?
Like that. Yeah. No, and it's beautiful when you see that. It's beautiful when you see how the
Humor.
prophet. Yeah, no, it's
Humor.
beautiful when
Yeah,
you see
yeah.
that. And he didn't mention that, but I'll tell you one. I love this one. There's a companion who's a legend, mashallah. His name is Sayyidina Nu'ayman. He was a practical joker, and he even used to play jokes on the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ loved him for it. So the Prophet ﷺ, even though obviously he's a messenger of God and he's come with the most serious of all messages, but at the same time you had the likes of Sayyidina Nu'ayman. The Prophet ﷺ used to crack some jokes. But when he told jokes, he said, "But I do not lie. I do not lie."
Okay, Jazakallah.
Got a text message here. It says, "Is hugging a sunnah?"
No, it's not. It's a cultural practice. It's not a religious practice.
Right. So when we do Eid and we do it, hug it 3 times. I thought that might have been based on something. So that's just
That's from the Sunnah. There's no harm in doing it. There's no harm in doing it. People just getting happy. But the
You know
Prophet actually discouraged hugging people. He actually discouraged it.
I was under the impression that hugging that 3 times came from Liverpool. They're trying to check where someone's wallet is. Is that correct?
You know what? This guy. So let's have a chat.
Sheikh, I just want to ask you, Sheikh, how long do you have in terms of time?
About another 15 minutes or so, because I still need to go play my Taraweeh.
Yeah, same here. Jazakallah. Thank you. Zaid, if you've got questions, then I'll carry on.
Yeah, just some feedback. I know there's no name for this one. It says, "Mashallah, great show. Love the banter, but more importantly, fantastic knowledge." And we are recording the show. I don't know how you record it, but if you are, good for you. Another one here. It says, "Assalamu alaikum. Just want to say a big salam to everybody from the guys in Dubai." So, Jazakallah.
And just on that point, Zaid, before we forget, for those people who are texting in, please subscribe to, if you go onto YouTube or from what you're watching now, you see a subscribe button. Please press that. Also like it as well. Please share this as well. Okay, because the idea is that we've only got a few days left for Ramadan, but after Ramadan, inshallah, we might continue to do these jokes and get the likes of Shaykh Haroon and other scholars on board if we can. So please do.
I'm not coming on with him, mate. I've had enough of him. Only in Ramadan I can tolerate him. After Ramadan, forget that.
Yeah. Yeah, just some other text messages here. It's saying, "Brothers, love your show. Keep up the good work." Another one here. A lot of knowledge from the Shaykh. Very comforting that we can hear and we can understand people in English. Sadly, not every mosque has English speakers. I don't think that is the case. I think they do have English speakers. Have you been to your local mosque? I think some people say that and they have a go at the masjids for no apparent reason. I don't know of many mosques now that don't have English speaking imams. Another one. Yeah.
There are still some like that. Although it has changed. It has changed now where most, like Zahid said, most masjids do have English speakers.
I think, when we started this show a long time ago, there weren't that many. But now, alhamdulillah, a lot of mosques, because you know why? I think the British born or those who lived in this country and understand this culture and speak English as a first language have kind of realized that, listen, we need to understand Islam. It needs to be in our language. The Urdu, the Punjabi, the Bangla, you've had that for 30 years. Now it needs to be in our language. And now it's more and more. Unfortunately, some of them do it every now and then, but a lot of them now, not just in Jummah, but they do it in terms of the weekly study circles, in terms of courses, and people now have got the platforms to study Islam as well. Okay. Zaid, you want to carry on?
Yeah, another text message. Brother, have you mentioned that smiling is a part of the Sunnah and the blessings from a simple smile between a husband and his wife or his wife and her husband? I'll give a smile out to Brother Fayaz who wants to stroke my head, but
He wants to stroke your beard.
Just on that point as well, Sheikh.
He wanted to tickle my beard. That's what he wanted to do, yeah.
In terms of, sorry, just a quick question before I forget is, in terms of husband and wife, the holding hands, is that something from the Sunnah? Is that something that you would recommend that we can do, should do, or is that something to kind of not do in public?
Before you answer this question, Sheikh, do not start with that, you'll never walk alone chorus again. So it's just a straightforward question, okay?
walk on with hope in your heart. And
Hey, Shaykh.
And you'll never
you'll
win a league.
walk alone. Sorry.
Sheikh,
Sorry.
you know this illness that you had.
Yeah.
You know this illness that you have you taken any tablets for it or anything like that?
Okay, Shaykh.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in terms of holding hands between husband and wife, is that something that's from the Sunnah, something that's recommended or prohibited or
It's
undesirable?
not, if we're saying Sunnah, did the Prophet do that? We don't have any reports that he would walk around holding hands with his wife, because that's a relatively new phenomenon. In most places of the world, that's not something that was done. But there's nothing inherently wrong in doing that. There's nothing in religion that would forbid that.
And I
Like,
also read that.
it's not like she's got to be walking 7 steps
Yeah,
behind. You're gonna have to stretch your hands behind you
yeah.
or something.
I also read a hadith somewhere, and you can tell me if this is not a strong one, where if a husband and wife hold hands, then the sins kind of fall off the hands, or the sins are reduced. Is that something you've come
I
across,
don't
or is
know.
that just
What I do know, the well-known one is that when you shake hands with somebody, then sins are dropping out of your hands.
right? Okay.
But
Yeah.
husband and wife, I don't know about that. No.
What about when modern newlywed people go and they have this outward explanation where they're sitting together, hugging each other, husband and wife in front of parents and family, and they
Yeah.
then come out with this. They say, look, what we're doing is the Sunnah, and we're following the Sunnah. And then they come out with the glass look, when the Prophet, peace be upon him, drank, he turned it around and gave it to Hazrat Aisha. She drank from the same thing. That's an outward. So we can sit together, we can, hold hands. We can't sing Kumbaya, but we can slap each other on the knees. What about all that lot? Is that all permissible? Are these lot following the Sunnah or what? Or is it bid'ah?
I think you follow the devils is the worst type of bid'ah going.
Well, we'll come to that. So what about these, modern day Romeo and Julietas?
The Prophet definitely did drink from the same container, and he passed it to Sayyidah Aisha, and she drank from it, and she passed it to him, and he turned it around and made sure that he drank from the very place that. But that's between husband and wife. That's not about a public display.
Exactly.
It's just about flaunting it in front of the whole world, showing that I love him and or I love her, and so on. That's not what the Prophet. Although there's no doubt it was known that he loved his wives, and it was known that, and he displayed that. But it wasn't about public displays of that type.
Yeah.
That was all private.
Exactly.
Within. Yeah.
Exactly.
That point that you mentioned about, is there an example from the Prophet where the Prophet used to walk 6 yards ahead of his wife? Because that's what we see nowadays. You got the husband, and then the wife's about 20 yards behind holding the bags or something.
See again. Do you actually see that? I don't know if you see.
I do see quite a lot. And I want to say, what kind of must
to stop behaving himself, then, don't you?
You know what it is, Saj, yeah? The reason why the Shaykh saying, do you all see that? In Liverpool, it's the other way around. The sisters are at the front, the brothers are behind because they don't want to pay for anything. They want the sisters to go there first, contactless, yep. Oh yeah, I'll come, and then they come round.
Do you know what? I don't even know why I'm talking to this guy. But Allah, that's nothing. That is nothing. There's no grounds for that whatsoever.
Okay, that's.
So I think on the serious point there was the fact that many people, they get married, and what they do is they've obviously delighted they get married, which subhanAllah, I would say anyone who's happy in their marriage, it's a blessing in itself. But what they do is they then use or manipulate certain sunnahs by having this over almost American, hi honey and all the rest of it. That's the bit that I think, because what I'm saying is that within the confines of privacy, that's a completely different matter. We're outside in the public domain or even in your family domain, there should be modesty.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just want to kind of, there were a lot more questions, but I think we've only got about 5 minutes. So, for someone who is a parent, is a teacher, is a student, is a leader, a spouse, a friend, a boss, all these different kind of fields that we have in life, can everyone and anyone get guidance and sunnah from the Prophet? Or would you say that the Sunnah doesn't really offer anything to some of these categories that I mentioned?
No. Every sphere, every area of life, the Sunnah has relevance to it, and it will always be relevant. It'll always be relevant. So yeah, even if we went through that list, we're going to find specific examples how the Prophet behaved or how he advises to behave.
Okay, Jazakallah. Zad, you've got any final text messages? Then we'll try to summarize, inshallah.
Yeah, there is. I think the one that's been coming up quite a lot, although it's not directly to do with the topic tonight of Sunnah, is, and I'll read it out. It says here, Eid Salah. Shaykh Haroon, please explain the way we could perform Eid prayers this coming week at our homes with our families. Our local masjid says we cannot pray Eid at home and that 34 takbir should be recited in place of Eid prayers.
There you have different views about what's the Sunnah, because as you all know, the Sunnah of Eid, it wasn't even done in the mosque. The Prophet never did Eid in the masjid. He always did it out in a public space. But however, now, like when we're speaking about what do we do at home, that kind of situation never arose. So it's something that the scholars are trying to infer. According to the view of Abu Hanifa, the Hanifis, you cannot have an Eid prayer done at home. But what's explicitly mentioned, stated, if you miss the Eid prayer, you can't do qada of it by yourself. You can't pray it by yourselves. And the nature of Eid is that it's an open
Congregation.
Yeah, congregation, and it's an invitation for people to come and join. So based on Abu Hanifa's view, because it's closed, it's private property, I couldn't just walk into your house or into your garden and start praying with you. So that voids the Eid prayer. So based upon, and that's why the mosque is saying that. However, the general advice would be do everything else that you would do on Eid, like celebrate it, like dress up, gifts for the kids and so on, have the food. And obviously you're not going to be able to go around and visiting people, which is another key element of Eid. But unlike the question put, takbirat of Eid, saying Allahu Akbar in the morning when you wake up, try and do that, because that's actually ordered in the Quran. وَلِتُكَبِّرُ اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. You complete the fast of Ramadan so that you may do takbir of Allah because He's guided you to this. So
Is that
everything
sorry,
else
Sheikh, is that what he's saying by the 34 times?
I don't know. 34.
I don't know where this 34 number
That should
comes
be
from.
2 or 4, not 34.
I thought no, it's I qualified. I said, do you mean 3 or 4? As in, I thought the person was referring to the namaz and wondering about takbirs in that, but he said no, 34.
On that point as well, Shaykh, is because just to get some clarity on this, because there are differences mentioned. So according to the Hanafi school of thought, you don't need to read the Eid Salah. The other school of thought,
you cannot read it. You cannot. So even though it's wajib, so you are required to do it, but the conditions are not met, so you cannot read it. But you're advised when you can't pray it to read 2 or 4 rak'ah Salat al-Duha, the morning prayer. So try and show that everybody at home is praying the morning prayer, which is 2 or 4 rak'ah, which is a blessed prayer. Normally to bless the prayer, it's a special prayer to be prayed in the morning, but especially in Eid when you're not able to pray. All the other imams, Shaykh, Malik and Ahmed, they said Eid prayer can be prayed at home. There's no.
Sheikh, I've got a very important question from Sheikh Husnain Yaqub. And it's a question to yourself, Sheikh.
Glory, Man United.
He says, the Sheikh says, should we be Klopp's army or the Mahdi's army?
Fatwa time.
Yes, I'm going to shoot him down when I see him now. Hey, how was he when he came on? Were you okay with him?
Fantastic, mashallah, fantastic.
Mashallah, yeah.
I think he answered all the questions. And you know what? He's got a sense of humour just like you as well. So that helps.
Sheikh has to have a sense of humour. 31 years.
Okay, Jazakallah. But Zaid, any final text that we can conclude?
Let me see. I don't know whether this gets.
Okay.
No, I don't think there's any more text messages that are of relevant. I just wanted to say a couple. There were some where people were asking in terms of Sunnah, name this Jamaat, name that Jamaat, but we've already covered that. We don't name people because there's no representation for the other person. If we misquote them, they can't turn around and say, Brother Zaid, you know, you said this about our Jamaat. You should have at least give us the opportunity to come on and counter that or explain it in a different way. So as a result of that, we don't do that. And it's also can be quite sectarianism in itself. So in terms of final thoughts, Brother Sajid.
Yeah, so Sheikh, you know, first of all, Jazakallah as always, you know, with your knowledge, with your banter, with your sense of humor, with
my patience putting up with that guy.
So what would be your final messages to our audience in terms of following the Sunnah of the Prophet today?
Just to repeat the first point, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, do they not know their messenger? One of the failings, one of the many failings that we have, although we shouldn't always just, but one of the many failings we have is that genuinely, like, people are constantly arguing about the Prophet, but they don't know him. They don't know him. They don't know him well enough. And you're arguing about somebody who came to remove those arguments, and he wanted to show how to be a true worshipper and how to be a true human being. So learn about your Prophet. Learn about your Prophet. And that's always the advice. Learn about your Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He should be more beloved to you than anything that there is. Fall in love with the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then all of this talk about, is the Sunnah relevant? What about Hadith? All of that kind of talk just becomes faulty, just becomes pointless talking. Like, when you become divorced and detached and distant from the messenger, and you don't know him as a personal, you don't have a personal relationship with him, then you can talk. The devil's come back on. Then you can start talking in that way, that is the Sunnah relevant. But when he's more beloved to you than your own self and than your father and mother, he's always going to be relevant to you. He will never lose a relevance. His way will be everything to you. You die for him. You die for his message. So fall back in love with the Prophet. Make him the most beloved that there is to you, remembering that he was the most beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let there be an emotional relationship with the messenger, and not just a mechanical routine relationship with that. I do it because I have to do it. No, I do it because I love him.
Okay,
Subhanallah. Brother Sajid, anything that you want to...
Yeah, Jazakallah, Sheikh. Yeah, and what I would like to say is, Jazakallah, Sheikh, first of all, as mentioned, in terms of taking part. And, you know, these kind of shows, I think, you know, yes, there is banter, and I think that's important as well. But I think there's a lot of messages that you mentioned. There's a lot of things that we can take from the life of the Prophet that will help us in the challenges that we face in our society too. That's why we do these kind of shows. Yes, there is jokes, but I think at the same time, when it comes to dealing with anger, when it comes to dealing with different issues of the relationships, when it comes to following, you know, the outward sunnahs, when it comes to getting to the ihsan that we talked about the other day, when it comes to disputes, when it comes to all kinds of issues that we face in our everyday life from the time we wake up, how we eat, how we drink, you know, how we sleep, and all the rules and regulations, you know, and from what you've highlighted, you know, we can get the guidance from the Prophet. So Jazakallah for that. And I think that's why I think it's important to these kind of shows. Brother Zaid, any final comments?
Yes, I think there is a few comments.
MashaAllah. Perfect. Perfect. That's the best comment ever. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah, Sheikh, for your time, Sheikh. I'm sure Zaid was getting ready to show you his full show. Oh, he's back.
No. I just pressed the wrong button, but I wanted to make sure.
Anyway, assalamu alaikum, all of you. Take care.
I didn't want any ill feelings from the brother, and I just wanted to tell him about the noble color of red. I know he can hear me. You can run, but in the words of Clubber Lang, you know, from Rocky 3, you can run, but you can't hide. So, Sheikh, on a serious note, I just want to thank you for your time. I think the way that you explain things are phenomenal. There's so many text messages that we had. I apologize to those who we couldn't answer the nitty-gritty, but the reason for that is it sounded a bit sectarian to me. I can't talk about a particular, you know, school of thought when that school of thought is not represented. As far as the Eid day namaz is concerned, it's very clear. If you follow the Hanafi faith, then the Eid namaz is not, can't be read at home. The rest of the schools of thought may allow it. And if that is the case, then, you know, skill yourself up. We talked about tonight, we talked about whether the Sunnah is relevant. And I think it's more relevant now than ever before. And what Shaykh Haroon said is love the Prophet, peace be upon him. Find out more. You know, we would find out about something and we would research something until the batteries conked out on our phones if we were really interested. But my golden rule is when you discover or when you start to make the intention of a journey into Islam, don't do it by yourself because you don't know. You're untrained. You wouldn't dream of starting a car and thinking, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll drive around and eventually when I start hitting the cars, I'll be able to drive okay. You do need some advice. And when you go there, if that imam straight away is shouting, don't read namaz here, don't bother with him because that can't be a person who's of learned skills. If he's soft and gentle, and the last thing is, it doesn't matter what age you are. You know, you can always go towards the Sunnah for guidance. You can go to the Quran for direct revelation. This show has been really, really popular because we've had lots of questions from different angles. What do we wear? How big the beard is? How thick it is? All of those things, they can be. There's flexibility within Islam. It's not rigid. So, Shaykh Haroon, Jazakallah khair. Thanks very much for giving us your time. Inshallah, I hope that you do win the title this year because, after all, you know, it's a bit like that boxer when he's just about to knock somebody out in the 15th round. And he says, look, I'm going to give you. So that's what Liverpool were. They were on the ropes.
See you later,
And-
lad. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
And after 3
I've
months,
had enough
he's got
of
up.
you. Assalamu
He's got
alaikum.
up. Yeah, so inshallah, I hope you do win the. I hope you do win the league.
Saj, why is he giving a final bayan at the end? He's been going on for 10 minutes, hasn't he?
No, but on a serious note, this is the last few days now of this blessed month, and
No.
do make your ibadah. The 27th night is approaching. It's a very, very, very spiritual, holy, and enhancing life. And for many people who are worried out there, whether it's because of debt, whether it's because of depression, anxieties, these are the days. And there is brother Kasur, who unfortunately is very ill. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant him shafa. All the other brothers that are out there, sisters who listens to our show, please subscribe. We don't make any money out of this. We do it because we want to see whether or not it's practical for us to ring up scholars like Shaykh Haroon, take his time up, because if it is only 10, 20 people are listening, we don't want to take him away from the other exceptional work that he does and say, can you come on our show, when really he could be doing more Dawa, he could be teaching, he could be explaining things, and of course he has his own family to look forward to. So inshallah, I don't know whether we will see the Shaykh again this Ramadan. Brother Sajid, have we got any other shows lined up for him? Or
No, unless you disappear, no.
I am going to disappear, as I say, Shaykh. After this lockdown, I am going to come to Liverpool to see yourself and the Grand Yoda himself, Shaykh Ibrahim.
Oh,
see
no.
how...
His Grand Yoda's Jurgen Klopp, isn't he?
Oh, I'll tell him that. I said, listen, you've been demoted here, Sheikh, you know. You're no longer the Grand Lala anymore, you know. So, Brother Sajid, what's our show tomorrow?
So tomorrow, inshallah, we should have Brother Qari Bilal in the studio tomorrow online.
Not him.
And inshallah, we will. And also, we've got a brother from the Myriad Foundation as well. And we should be talking about our role in our community. Okay, what should we all be doing, inshallah? Jazakallah. And then on Wednesday, we'll be talking about addictions, drugs, alcohol, and so forth. And then on Thursday, we've got Sheikh Wasim Ahmed will be in the studio. And then on Friday, if Sheikh Haroon is free, I'm sure we will invite him again, inshallah.
Let me know,
I hope so, because...
I will do. I'll be in touch, inshallah. Jazakallah.
Until next time, remember, keep everybody in your... Yeah, you definitely won't with a policeman next to you. And brothers, and just remember, keep everybody in your dua. Smile. That is a sunnah of the Prophet and every Prophet. Inshallah, keep us in your duas. And until tomorrow, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.